Chapter 596. Everyone looked in the direction of the voice. That was the center of the bloodshed land, where Heber's palace was located. Aim's eyes flickered a few times. She glanced at Hela and her sister, sighed slightly, and lowered her hands, which were covered by her sleeves. She was not going to attack again, and the force field that she had been accumulating quickly dissipated. The tense atmosphere instantly calmed down. She no longer looked at Carol and turned to look at Malekith, who had also blocked her attack, and said coldly, "Don't just stand there. Lead the way." When she had decided to accept the tyrant's invitation, Ames had already expected to encounter something like this. Her previous attack had already shown her attitude. Since the tyrant was involved, she did not want to have a bigger conflict in someone else's territory. After all, she was not there to cause trouble this time. Malekith nodded and led the way. Everyone followed him. Han Shao turned around and glanced at Carol one last time. Looking at Ames and the others leave, Carol did not say anything to stop them. He stopped smiling and shook his head at the two Vanguard officials. I thought that she would continue to attack despite the warning. Although I didn't go too far with my understanding of Ames, this is enough to anger her. One of the Vanguard officials sighed and said, "The Dragon Emperor has also changed. The rumors are right. She has the ambition to expand." The Black Star Corps also represented the expansion of Floating Dragon. This situation had long attracted the attention of many organizations, and the Bloodshed Land was also paying attention to Floating Dragon's development. Carol's mission was to test Ames' attitude. His words were mostly directed at Black Star and did not directly insult Ames. He would be able to obtain a lot of information from Ames' reaction. If she had a bigger plan, she would not have started a bigger conflict. At the same time, in Heber's palace, only Heber and the Clint emissary were in the room. The surveillance image of Ames and the others was displayed on the virtual screen. The Clint kingdom placed great importance on the tyrant's gathering and saw it as a diplomatic event. The emissary was a high-ranking official, and he had personally attended to show the good relationship between Clint and the tyrant. The Clintons had slender bodies. Standing beside Heber, who was 7 to 8 meters tall, they looked very thin and short. "Your Excellency, Tyrant, you're still as tough as ever. You didn't even need to show yourself. Just a few words were enough to make the Dragon Emperor retreat. I thought that I would be able to see Your Excellency, Tyrant, make a move." The Clint official spoke with a respectful tone and a smile on his face. "Yes." Heber shook the specially made giant wine cup and did not comment. The Clint official shook his head and said with a smile, "What a pity. If only she did it. This gathering is very important. If she causes trouble at this time, she will offend many big shots. Since she wants to expand, she won't do anything," Heber said calmly. "Aren't you afraid that she'll take revenge on you after the gathering?" The Clint official chuckled. "She's someone who would do something like that. Isn't that what you want to see the most?" Heber's tone was calm. "Haha, you're right. This will give you an excuse to attack Floating Dragon Island." The Clint official laughed. He was the one who wanted to see Ames make a move the most. "Even the Amethyst civilization won't stop you from invading Colton with this reason." Heber glanced at him and could not be bothered to reply. Although they were allies, his goal was different from the Clintons. Ames, TSK, with the halo of a beyond grade A, if I can get a woman with such a status, all other women will pale in comparison. The Clint High official admired Ames' body on the virtual screen and said to himself with a wanton look in his eyes. He had a high status and had countless partners. His aesthetic focus was no longer on appearance. Only the bonus of status and identity could make a woman more attractive in his eyes. As the only female among the 4 beyond grade, as in the Shattered Star Ring, Ames was clearly the most difficult woman to tame in the Shattered Star Ring. A star system civilization would not dare provoke a beyond grade A, but to a star cluster civilization, while a beyond grade A was powerful, they were not as fearful as a star system civilization. Only a beyond grade A like the Tyrant would be valued more by a star cluster civilization. Therefore, the Clint official did not care about expressing his desire for Ames. After all, it was just a thought. "I hate women who are too headstrong," Heber said slowly. "Her personality still needs to be polished." The Clint official shook his head. He could only think about Ames. Only Heber had the ability to put it into action. On the other side, Han Xiao and the others were on their way to the guest room. After the small incident earlier, the atmosphere in the team was rather quiet. Black Star, don't think too much. Carol did it on purpose, Ames said suddenly. I know. Han Xiao shrugged. This should be Heber's idea. I don't know what he's planning, but Aesop has a feeling that this gathering is not ordinary. He told me not to be rash, Ames explained. Han Xiaoxin's heart skipped a beat. It turned out that Ames had already asked Aesop to predict this gathering. Could it be that Aesop's suggestion was the reason why she insisted on coming? Carol was one of the earliest members of Floating Dragon, but he betrayed me and joined the tyrant. He now has a high position in Bloodshed Land. Han Xiao stroked his chin. The tyrant actually dared to let a traitor take up an important position. He's very daring. When Malekith was trying to poach him, he had also offered him the position of Vanguard Officer. Because he's the tyrant, he's not afraid of anyone betraying him. What do you mean? If Carol betrayed me, the tyrant could protect him. If he betrayed the tyrant, no one in the Shattered Star Ring would be able to protect him. Ames sighed. Furthermore, I have to admit that the tyrant's personal charisma far exceeds mine. You're very afraid of him? Han Xiao raised his brows. I thought you were not afraid of anything. Of course I'm not afraid of him, but even if I hate him, it doesn't change the fact that he's very strong. Ames shook her head, paused, and said, therefore, in the tyrant's territory, try to keep a low profile. Don't be angry because of Carol's words. He did on purpose. Ames valued Han Xiao and took the initiative to explain because she was afraid that Han Xiaoxin would hold a grudge against her. Han Xiaoxin felt warmth in his heart. He did not take Carol's words to heart, but he did not expect Ames to consider his feelings. According to his understanding of Ames did not seem like someone who would consider other people's feelings. I feel that you've changed. Han Xiao almost blurted out the word dog. How have I changed? Ames smiled faintly. You become more patient than before. Ames smiled and did not reply. She turned her head and looked at Hela and her sister. Aesop said that only children are willful. He told me to change, or else I'll suffer one day. Han Xiao rolled his eyes. Aesop, that old thing, how can he be so shameless? What right does he have to say that? I think so too. Ames's beautiful eyes curved like crescent moons as she covered her mouth and laughed. The building that provided the guest rooms was located next to Heber's palace. It was a huge castle, and the entire castle was made up of guest rooms. Some participants of the gathering had already checked in, so the treatment was naturally very high. They would not neglect the guests. There were still a few days before the gathering officially began. Many forces would arrive early because the days before the gathering was an opportunity to expand their network and make friends. It was very rare for the representatives of various forces to gather together. With Malekith leading the way, Han Xiao and the others walked into the castle. At this time, there were guests in groups of 2s and 3s in the hall. They came from different races and came from different organizations in the Shattered Star Ring. Hearing that someone had walked in, the guests in the hall all looked over. After recognizing Ames, their expressions were a little strange. They seemed to want to greet her, but did not move. They had also heard the tyrants roar earlier. Ames and Heber had a conflict, and after weighing the pros and cons, they felt that it was more important to please the tyrant. Thus, they did not approach to chat. Ames did not mind. The group left the hall and went upstairs. Bloodshed Land had arranged the rooms. Ames had one, Han Xiao had another, and Hela and Aurora had another. After returning to the room and closing the door, only Han Xiao was left in the room. He activated a compressed orb and turned it into a detector. He checked the room and did not find any monitoring devices. Han Xiao nodded, took out a mechanical device, and placed it on the ground. Hum. A light flashed and released an illusion that covered the room. Even with magic monitoring devices, they could only see the illusion projection and not what he was doing. Although there were many important people living in this castle, and there should be monitoring devices, Han Xiao was used to being cautious. Carol, Han Xiao's eyes sparkled. He turned into his chaos body and activated void vision. His vision suddenly crossed the distance and saw Carol's every move. When Ames decided to stop, Han Shao took the opportunity to throw an observer's mark at Carol and replace the position of a galactic pirate. The observer's mark was used to monitor Carol's movements just in case. If there was a need in the future, it might come in handy. Furthermore, Carol was the logistics manager of Bloodshed Land and probably had to come into contact with important equipment often. Han Shao felt that he should have a lot of money on him. It seems like I can use the observer's mark to obtain information in this gathering. Han Shaoxin thought to himself. In his previous life, no players had discovered the tyrant's gathering. Without reaching this level, they would not have been able to come into contact with the circle of important people. This was also the first time he had heard of this event. Although there was some unpleasantness, overall, this gathering was still very safe. At most, there would only be a few scares. Ames' idea was to focus on participation, but this was indeed a good opportunity to obtain information. Han Shao decided to make use of it. The participants were all important people. Perhaps some of the information they revealed was ambiguous to others, but with his memory of the storyline, he could connect many things with just a little inspiration. Chapter 597. For the next few days, Han Shao and the others waited in the castle. Everything was peaceful, and the Bloodshed Land did not have any conflicts. The tyrant's 8 boys, the 8 Vanguard officials did not appear again. Other than not being able to enter the secret areas, the guests could move freely in the Bloodshed Land and let the soldiers lead the way. Han Shao would occasionally go out and visit the Bloodshed Land. The ordinary soldiers in the headquarters of Planet Heber were all low-grade supers, and there were no ordinary people. The tyrant's subordinates were mainly pugilists, and muscular bullies could be seen everywhere. The soldiers wore special gray heavy armor, which looked simple and plain. The armor had the effect of strengthening one's physique and pugilist energy. Han Shao noticed that other than the ordinary soldiers, the Bloodshed Land also had some elite soldiers. They were stronger individually and wore special armor with many additional accessories, such as special long tails, wings, and claws. These accessories were all multi-purpose accessories. According to the soldier who led the way, these soldiers were called the 10,000 B soldiers, one of the elite troops of the Bloodshed Land. Han Shao paid more attention to the weapons and vehicles of the Bloodshed Land. They were all unique. Clearly, the tyrant had a mechanic team that specialized in researching special equipment. The Bloodshed Land was happy to show off its strength to the guests, but what it showed was only the tip of the iceberg. There was definitely something even more powerful under the surface. Han Shao could not help but feel pressured. He was also developing his own organization. Although he was rising very quickly, there was still a huge gap between him and a large organization with many years of accumulation and resources. The development of the Black Star Corps still had a long way to go. Over the past few days, new guests had arrived and stayed in the castle. Although Ames had come to participate in the gathering, she obviously did not care about such things. She stayed in a room to teach Hela and Aurora, and Han Shao represented her in the outside world. While he was not visiting the Bloodshed Land, Han Shao was chatting with these guests. The guests all represented famous organizations in the Shattered Star Ring. This was a good opportunity to expand his network and get to know other people. Among them were the leaders of super financial groups, the representatives of star cluster civilizations, and the leaders of various organizations, such as intelligence organizations, firearms organizations, and so on. Han Shao even met the person in charge of the Mercenary Alliance in the Shattered Star Ring. The other party's attitude was very friendly, and they chatted happily. The identity, status, and influence of the guests who were invited to the party belonged to the highest circle in the Shattered Star Ring. Most of the organizations had heard of Black Star. While they did not pay much attention to him, he represented Floating Dragon after all, and the Black Star Corps had been in the limelight recently. Han Zhao's current fame and reputation had reached a certain level. Most of the guests still recognized Han Shao as a member of their circle. All along, Han Shao had only been in different star systems. That was only the tip of the iceberg in the Shattered Star Ring, and his influence was limited. Now, he had finally reached a higher level, and come into contact with the bigger and core of the Shattered Star Ring. The guests were also divided into a few levels. The lowest level were the super financial groups, and the middle level were the large organizations. Floating Dragon was in between the low and middle levels. The highest level was a huge organization like the Bloodshed Land, as well as the representatives from the 7-star cluster civilizations of the Shattered Star Ring. As for the recognition of Han Xiao, it decreased from low to high. Most of the representatives of the star cluster civilizations had a more official attitude and were not interested in Han Xiao. Only 2 civilizations were a little more enthusiastic: the Amethyst civilization and the Klent Kingdom. Colton was the territory of Amethyst civilization, and the Dragon Emperor often wandered around the Colton star cluster. In the eyes of the representatives of the Amethyst civilization, Han Xiao could be considered half an ally. The Amethyst civilization style was more gentle and friendly. The high officials of the Klent Kingdom were even more enthusiastic and took the initiative to talk to Han Xiao. Han Xiao naturally did not reject them. However, he was also a little puzzled. He had never come into contact with the Klents before, so why were they so enthusiastic like animals in heat? In a few days, the contact details of hundreds of people appeared in Han Xiao's communicator. They were all elites in their respective industries. This was a huge harvest of connections, and this trip was not wasted. When he returned to Floating Dragon, he would share the contact details of these big shots with Jenny. She would definitely be very touched. Soon, it was the day before the gathering. On this day, the tyrant actually sent someone to inform Han Xiao and the others, inviting them to a private meeting at the Heber Palace next door. Heber wants to meet privately? What's his motive? Han Xiao was curious. I'm not sure. Im shook her head. We'll know when we get there. She also wanted to know Heber's attitude, so she accepted the invitation. The group walked into the Heber Palace and came to a huge conference room. 3 thrones floated 3 meters above the ground, forming a tripod. On one of the thrones sat a 7-meter-tall giant with a strong aura. As soon as he walked into the room, everyone looked over subconsciously. Heber's presence was extremely strong. He could attract the attention of others immediately, making it impossible for them to ignore him. This was the first time Han Xiao had seen Heber in person. The first thing he thought of was a lion. So big. This was the first impression that Heber gave Han Xiao. Sit. Heber looked over. His eyes were very calm, and his tone was very calm. However, there was a natural sense of oppression, as if his domineering aura was carved into his bones. No matter what he did, it would subconsciously spread out. Aim snorted coldly. Her body floated in the air, and she sat on a throne. Han Xiao and the 2 sisters stayed beside the throne. Why are you looking for me? Ames asked in a low voice. Heber looked at the 3rd empty seat. We're still missing 1 person. We'll talk about it when everyone is here. After saying that, the tyrant closed his eyes and went to rest, leaving Ames there. How arrogant! Han Xiao couldn't help but twitch the corner of his mouth. Ames snorted. She was used to it. Heber's style was like this. He did things his own way, and he was straightforward. He didn't like to talk nonsense. After waiting for a while, the door opened again. A child draped in a loose robe floated in. A few tiny dragons of magic power circled around him, swimming obediently. This child had a round face and pointy ears. He looked like he was only 6 or 7 years old. His body was small, and the red and white mage robe was like an exquisite and luxurious quilt on his body. Instead of saying that he was wearing the mage robe, it was more like the mage robe was wrapping him up. The bottom of the robe was almost touching the ground. Below the child, there were a few masked men in black robes. When they walked, their heads were lowered, making them look very mysterious. You're here too? Ames raised her voice. I heard that there's something big this time, so I'm here to join in the fun. The child sat on the empty throne and nodded at the 2 of them. Ames, Heber, long time no see. Han Xiaoxin's heart skipped a beat. This child was another beyond grade A in the Shattered Star Ring, Magus Austin, an unfathomable mage. Austin looked very young, but he was actually from a long-lived race. He was born with an unparalleled affinity for magic. He also had a series of titles, such as Law Twister, Master of Forbidden Spell Creation, half-magic entity, arcane dominator, and so on. Han Xiao looked at the masked mages in black robes below Austin. Every mage had their hands clasped in front of them, hiding them in their wide sleeves. They stared at the floor with their heads lowered like silent statues. So they're forbidden sorcerers. Han Xiao narrowed his eyes. Magus Austin's organization was called the Hidden Red Robe Abbey, one of the holy lands for mages in the Shattered Star Ring. They mainly researched and discussed magic and occasionally handled some magic investigation cases. As long as one was a mage in the Shattered Star Ring, 80% of them would be willing to join the Hidden Red Robe Abbey. The Hidden Red Robe Abbey was divided into outer members and inner members. The outer members were scattered people and would not be forced too much. If they wanted to learn more advanced magic, they would have to pass an assessment and sign a magic contract to become an inner member of the Hidden Red Robe Abbey. Only the inner members were considered the troops under Austin's command. The forbidden sorcerers were the elites of the Hidden Red Robe Abbey. Due to the different nature of the organization, the size of their armed forces was not as big as Bloodshed Lands. However, if the outer members were included, their numbers would probably far exceed Bloodshed Lands. Other than Ames, Heber had also invited the other Beyond Grade as. Of the 4 Beyond Grade, as in the Shattered Star Ring, 3 were gathered there. Heber then opened his eyes. Everyone's here. Let's get down to business. Wait, where's the other guy? Ames asked. She was referring to the last Beyond Grade, who was not present. He said he was too far away and couldn't be bothered to come. That's indeed his style. Austin chuckled. Heber did not want to waste time chatting and went straight to the point. I'm meeting you this time because I want to introduce someone to you. The door on the other side opened, and a person walked in. Everyone looked over with curiosity in their eyes. They wanted to see who this person that Heber had specially introduced to the other 2 Beyond Grade as was. This person was a humanoid species. He was tall, about 2.5 meters. His skin was light red, and he had short hair. His facial features were quite unique, but they were still in line with the aesthetics of the universe humans. He was wearing a soft robe with a unique style that looked very complicated and luxurious. It was unknown what material it was made of, but the robe had exquisite patterns and was crimson in color. Facing the 3 Beyond Grade as, this person's expression was calm and extraordinary. He stood in the middle of the 3 thrones and nodded to each of them. Let me introduce, Heber said calmly, the Red Empire's special envoy, Zoel. As soon as he said that, everyone's pupils constricted. Han Zhao's expression did not change, but his heart was in turmoil. The Red Empire, one of the 3 universal civilizations. The most advanced civilization had actually sent a special envoy to the Tyrant's Gathering. Had Heber already made contact with the 3 universal civilizations? Wait a minute. Han Xiao suddenly realized where the problem was. The Shattered Star Ring was nominally under the Radiant Federation's territory, but the Red Empire had secretly sent a special envoy to the Tyrant's Gathering. The significance of this was extraordinary. Han Zhao's thoughts spun quickly. Suddenly, he thought of something, and his expression changed slightly. He still remembered that the background of version 3.0 Crimson Tide was the expansion of the Red Empire and the various star fields. So, the signs appeared at this time. Han Xiao took a deep breath and calmed himself down. The Tyrant's Gathering was probably a trap. Ames frowned slightly and could not help but think of Aesop's prophecy before they left. This gathering was indeed not simple. The atmosphere became silent. Zoel nodded slightly and broke the silence. It's an honor to meet the 3 Beyond Grade A supers of the Shattered Star Ring. We're honored as well, Austin replied. He then looked at Heber with a questioning gaze. Introduce them to the special envoy of the Red Empire. What does this mean? What we're going to talk about next is the theme of this gathering. I'll tell you in advance. Heber spoke with a deep voice. Not long ago, the Outerverse explorer that the Federation of Light placed outside the Shattered Star Ring sent back a report. It crossed a large section of the desolate universe belt and is currently marking out a new star cluster area in the unexplored universe. That is an ownerless star cluster that needs to be explored and included into the Shattered Star Ring's territory. Everyone had different expressions. No wonder the seven-star cluster civilizations sent representatives to attend this gathering. Han Xiao understood. Ever since the peace treaty was signed, the three universal civilizations have been working hard to explore the unexplored universe outside and continuously expand the known universe. Every time a new territory appeared, it meant a new battle. With all the star clusters in the Shattered Star Ring being divided by the seven-star cluster civilizations, a new star cluster was a new piece of cake. Every star cluster civilization wanted a piece of it or to monopolize it. The Radiant Federation wants to incorporate the new star cluster into the Shattered Star Ring, and we want to define it as the starting point of a new star field. Zol's words had a deeper meaning. Although he did not go into detail, everyone understood what he meant. The Shattered Star Ring was the territory of the Radiant Federation, but the new star field was ownerless. The Red Empire had a huge plan and wanted more than just a star cluster. In the explored universe, the central star field was very prosperous, while the border star fields were more chaotic and backward. However, border star fields like the Shattered Star Ring were the places where the competition was the most intense. That was because only the border could continue to explore and expand. Therefore, on behalf of the Red Empire, I hope to receive your help. Zoel revealed his intentions. Heber remained silent at the side and introduced the Red Empire's envoy to the two of them. Clearly, the Bloodshed Land had made their choice long ago. So, the Radiant Federation or the Red Empire? Austin and Ames looked at each other and remained silent. Han Zhao's eyes narrowed. Chapter 598. 3 thrones floated in the air, and 3 beyond grade as sat on them, surrounding the Red Empire's envoy, Zoel, in the middle. What can we get if we help you? After thinking for a while, Austin was the first to express his opinion. Everyone present was a respectable person. Even the Red Empire's envoy could not make empty promises. Asking for the help of beyond grade, as with just one sentence without any conditions in exchange, he was not a hooligan. A new territory represents an opportunity. If we can use the newly discovered star cluster as the starting point of a new star field, the areas we explore in the future will all be included in the new star field. At that time, the new star field might become a star field of the same size as the Shattered Star Ring. The potential benefits are huge. With a wave of his hand, the miniature communicator on his wrist projected a virtual star map, marking the location of the new area. Beyond the edge of the Shattered Star Ring was an unexplored universe marked in dark colors. After crossing a long, desolate universe belt, a new bright area appeared in the dark area. That was the location of the new star cluster marked by the Radiant Federation's exploratory device. The galaxy was roughly divided into planets, star zones, star systems, star clusters, and finally the largest star field. The Red Empire wanted the new star cluster not only to seize a piece of territory, but also to turn it into a bridgehead for their exploration. They defined it as a new border star field and included it in the Red Empire's territory. This way, the Red Empire could use it as a starting point to explore and expand the territory of the new star field. The areas that were discovered later all belonged to the new star field, which was the Red Empire. The Radiant Federation controlled the Shattered Star Ring, and the Red Empire wanted another border star field. They were not willing to let the Radiant Federation monopolize this unexplored universe. Zoel was explaining the stakes, and Ames and Austin were listening. Han Zhao's attention, however, was attracted by the new star cluster. No matter how he looked at it, he felt that the location of the new star cluster was a little familiar. After carefully looking at it for a while, Han Xiao suddenly had a flash of inspiration. F***CK. Isn't this part of the Flickering World? Flickering World was the main storyline of the later version. It was a brand new star field with billions of stars shining brightly, lighting up the dark universe. The unexplored star fields were rich in resources. All the players in Galaxy would receive main storyline missions from all over the universe and gather in the Flickering World to explore. There were also countless races and civilizations moving from the known universe into the Flickering World. This was a huge reshuffle of the organizations. The new star cluster that Zoel had shown was part of the flickering world in Han Zhao's memories, just the tip of the iceberg. Unexpectedly, the later versions had already begun to show signs. Han Xiaoxin's mind raced. We've only excavated a small area. It'll take many years before we can fully explore it. There's still a long way to go before version 2. Though, in the past, the players had fought for the various organizations and completed exploration missions. This time, they might have a chance to become chess players. Just like what that emissary had said, a new territory was the best opportunity. This might be a chance to reach the top. Although the Black Star Core was not strong enough and was much weaker than a colossus like the Bloodshed Land, Han Zhao's biggest advantage was that he had a rough understanding of how things had developed. In order to obtain the qualifications to set up this plan, he would need a stronger organization. The stronger the organization, the more benefits there would be. Currently, he was far from enough. Thankfully, there were still a few versions left. Han Xiao could not help but feel a sense of urgency. The birth of the flickering world at least meant one thing, which was that the Red Empire had succeeded in the end. They had taken the new star cluster from the Radiant Federation and defined it as a new star field. While he was thinking, Zoel had already finished stating the conditions. In conclusion, the Red Empire would give him full support in the dark. Obtaining the support of a universal civilization was a very tempting condition. Although the Radiant Federation controlled the Shattered Star Ring, they rarely came into contact with the organizations in the Shattered Star Ring. Austin frowned with a serious expression. However, coupled with his young face, he looked very comical and cute. I'm not very interested in this kind of thing. I'd rather stay at home, researching spells, so I'm sorry, I want to remain neutral. I can only promise you that I won't help the Radiant Federation. After thinking for a while, Austin gave a response. He wanted to stay out of this and remain neutral. I understand. Zoel was not surprised. They were both beyond great so it was not good to force him. To be able to get him to remain neutral and not help either side was not a bad result. He had also talked to Heber in detail. This private meeting was mainly to represent the dynasty and reduce the potential helpers of the Radiant Federation. What about you, Ames? Heber asked. Ames was not very interested in this kind of thing. Just as she was about to follow Austin's example and reject, she suddenly paused and looked at Han Xiao. Blackstar, what do you think? Han Xiao was deep in thought when he was suddenly cued. He was stunned for a moment. Seeing that everyone's eyes were on him, Han Xiao pondered for a few seconds and nodded. The Red Empire's reputation can naturally be trusted. The envoy is right. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity with huge potential benefits. Personally, I feel that the Red Empire's chances of success are more than 60%. Zol's eyes sparkled, and he smiled. While muttering to himself about when he had bribed this guy, he nodded to Han Xiao and said, "Good taste." Han Xiao also nodded and continued. Therefore, I feel that there's no need to be too hasty to reject. This is not a bad thing. Hearing that, Ames thought for a moment and did not reject directly. Instead, she said, "I'll think about it." Heber's and Austin's expressions changed slightly. They had known Ames for many years. At the start, Ames had clearly expressed her intention to reject, but after hearing Han Zhao's suggestion, she immediately changed her mind. Black Star's importance in the Dragon Emperor's eyes seemed to have exceeded their expectations. Not just a fighter, but also an advisor. Austin rubbed his chin with his chubby hands and pondered. That's right. With Ames' personality, if she wanted to develop her forces, she would indeed need a reliable advisor. Black Star seemed to be quite capable. Heber was the most direct. Black Star, Malekith said that he tried to recruit you, but you rejected him. Han Zhao's expression changed, and he slowly nodded. I rarely try a second time, but I want to ask you again personally. Heber faced Han Xiao, extended his hand, and said solemnly, Black Star, be my subordinate, Han Xiao said. Boom! Ames' long hair fluttered in the wind, and her aura filled the entire place. Her tone was cold. You want to poach my people right in front of me. Do you still have me in your eyes? The terrifying pressure pressed down on Heber from all directions, but he did not feel it at all. He ignored Ames and only stared at Han Xiao. Do you accept or reject? Han Zhao's mouth twitched. Oh my God! The NTR in front of everyone made his scalp go numb. He was so overbearing. He did not expect Heber to personally invite him at this time. This guy does not care about the situation at all. The stronger a pugilist is, the harder it is to be stubborn. Sorry, my answer is still the same. Han Xiao felt like he was being pursued. He suppressed his chaotic emotions and helplessly shook his head. Heber nodded and did not get angry because of the rejection. It was as if he did not mention this topic and let it go. He liked talents, but he would not force people who did not want to join him. The force field was still strengthening. Heber turned to look at Ames. Why aren't you retracting your Esper ability? Do you want to fight? Ames was expressionless. Her aura gradually rose, and she was on the verge of exploding. She almost threw Aesop's advice out of the window. Austin had no choice but to intervene to prevent the two from really fighting. He pinched his fingers and cast a series of calming spells on Ames. Okay. It's not the first day you know him. Don't mess around. Chapter 599. Ames was stacked with dozens of layers of buffs, and her anger gradually subsided. She then snorted coldly and retracted her Esper ability. Heber did not mind. It was not the first time he had a conflict with Ames. He then turned around and nodded at Zoel. Then, I'll leave first. I look forward to your decision. Zoel understood. He passed the contact information to Ames, smiled, and was about to walk out of the room. Looking at the back of the envoy, Han Xiao suddenly hesitated. Should I plant an eye on Zoel? It feels like it will be very rewarding. He did not forget that today was just a private meeting before the official start of the gathering. When the gathering started tomorrow, Heber would introduce Zoel to all the guests. That would be when the undercurrent would be surging. The Red Empire would not personally take over the territory. Once they took action, the Radiant Federation would also take action, and the conflict would escalate. Because it had not reached the stage of fighting outside the chess game yet. The Red Empire was trying to rope in the organizations of the Shattered Star Ring to increase the number of chess pieces in their hands. With the universe as the chessboard, they would use the chess pieces to fight for benefits. Throwing an observer's mark would allow him to see what the Red Empire was doing behind the scenes and how many organizations had joined the Red Empire. This was precious information. However, although the observer's mark had almost no trace, and even Ames could not detect it, there were still two other beyond grades present, and it might be discovered. Furthermore, the people of the Red Empire might have special means. Let's give it a try. Even if we're discovered, it won't be too serious of a problem. After all, they're trying to win us over, not enemies. Han Xiao thought for a while. A gray light flashed through his eyes, and he threw an observer's mark at Zoel. Ames and Heber did not notice anything. Zoel did not react either. He left the room, and the door blocked his back view. This time, Han Xiao suddenly felt that someone was looking at him. He turned around and saw Austin staring at him. He noticed Han Xiaoxin's heart skipped a beat. Everyone's abilities were different. Ames and Heber were unable to detect it, but Austin was a magician. He was very sensitive to all kinds of energy. While the ripples of void energy were very subtle, they did not escape his senses. However, Austin didn't say anything to remind him. He only gave Han Xiao a friendly smile before looking away. Han Xiao didn't know what he meant, but it was good that he didn't say it out loud. If there's nothing else, I'm leaving. Ames was annoyed by Heber and didn't want to stay here any longer. Wait a minute. At this moment, Heber spoke. Is there anything else? Ames frowned. I heard that you've been expanding your forces recently. We can work together. Heber's tone softened. Join hands. Ames smiled faintly. Do you think we're on good terms? I cannot pursue the farce of you attacking Planet Heber in the past, Heber said. I'll write it off. Then you'd better continue pursuing it. Ames couldn't be bothered to argue. She left the throne, turned around, and left. Han Xiao brought Hela and Han Xiaoxin out of the room. Austin laughed. Haha, Heber, she's starting to hate you more and more. It doesn't matter. Heber didn't care. I thought you were going to ask for a marriage alliance again. Forget it. She probably won't agree this time. Heber shook his head. To be honest, both of you have strong personalities. If you want to get her, you have to restrain yourself a little. Austin's tone was playful. He was more easygoing and had a good relationship with both of them. He knew about Heber's history of pursuing Ames. I won't change for any woman. Heber waved his hands. He did not have much of an obsession with Ames. In the entire Shattered Star Ring, Heber felt that only Ames, who was also a beyond grade A super, was worthy of him. Only she was qualified to be his spouse, and it did not involve love. If he could get Ames, his organization would have 2 beyond grade A supers. This would be a huge improvement. Heber did not bother to lie and was too lazy to waste time. He had always been straightforward and did not avoid the fact that his real goal of pursuing Ames was just to join forces. Austin still remembered the time when Heber proposed for the first time. Ames was furious. Every time he thought about it, he would want to laugh. When Han Xiao and the others walked to the entrance of the palace, Carol was just about to enter. Both parties bumped into each other. "You guys again." Carol did not have any intention of provoking them this time. He did not have his eyes glued to Ames like last time. His expression was very calm, as if he only saw them as passers-by. Ames glanced at him indifferently. Although she was not happy, she could not do anything in the tyrant's territory. She did not want to bother with Carol anymore. Just as the 2 parties were about to walk past each other, Han Xiao suddenly reached out and pressed on Carol's shoulder, grabbing him tightly like an iron clamp. Carol turned around with a confused expression and said, "What are you doing? I remember that you said before that I'm just a substitute for you." Han Xiao narrowed his eyes and said with bad intentions, "Since you call yourself my senior, give me some pointers." Carol's expression changed. He thought that the previous provocation was over, but he did not expect that after a few days, Han Xiao would suddenly make trouble for him. Ames stopped in her tracks with a look of surprise on her face. "What do you mean? You want to fight here? This is Planet Heber," Carol said with a threatening tone. "Don't worry, I just want to spar with you and see how strong a traitor like you is." Han Xiao chuckled. "Don't tell me that the tyrant's subordinate doesn't dare to accept the challenge. I understand. This is Ames' intention, right?" Carol felt that he had guessed correctly. Ames must have been humiliated and wanted to regain her face, so she asked Black Star to challenge him. If it was just a spar between officers, Heber would not have said anything. Huh, is she that confident in this new officer? Carol's expression turned cold. "Okay, I accept your challenge. I hope you don't lose too quickly." Bloodshed Land was his home ground, and he could use countless machines. Even if Black Star's name was very famous recently, Carol was not afraid at all. Regarding Ames' new officer, Carol had heard about it. He also wanted to know the full strength of Han Xiao and see what kind of person Ames had found to replace him. Furthermore, his identity was sensitive, and he represented the tyrant. Since Ames had asked Black Star to challenge him, he could not back down. Although Heber could protect him with the tyrant's personality, if he backed down, he would end up very unlucky. Bloodshed Land despised cowards the most. If one was not a battle maniac, they would not be able to reach the upper echelons of the tyrant. Han Zhao's lips curled up, and he suddenly said, "We're all mechanics. It's boring to just spar. Let's make a bet." "Bet on what?" "Let's bet 5 sets of mechanical blueprints. The loser has to obey the winner and take out the blueprints requested by the winner." Han Xiao smiled slyly. Using blueprints as a bet. Carol frowned. Blueprints were the lifeblood of a mechanic, and it was very common for mechanics to use blueprints as a bet. "Okay," Carol nodded. Han Zhao's eyes sparkled. There were a few reasons why he had suddenly challenged Carol. Ames could not make a move, but he could. It was a good opportunity for him to be a little more high profile and show his strength. This would be good for increasing his position in this circle, and he could also help Ames vent her anger. If the tyrant interfered in a spar between officers, it would be embarrassing. The second reason was that he had been spying on Carol for the past few days and had a rough idea of his strength. Know yourself and know your enemy, and you will never be defeated. Furthermore, he had also discovered that Carol had a few decent mechanical equipment. Han Xiao proposed a bet because he wanted to win a few blueprints. He would not fight a battle that did not have any benefits. Ames' wrath, mission introduction, the traitor's provocation, and the tyrant's difficulties have all made Ames unhappy. As a member of Floating Dragon, you know what you need to do. Mission requirements: publicly defeat Carol. Reward: 1,500 EXP plus 2,500 floating dragon faction relationship, plus 30 aims favorability, plus 2 Heber favorability, plus 15 renown. Failure punishment, minus 20 aims favorability, minus 5 Heber favorability. Chapter 600. Bloodshed Land, Open Air Training Ground number 30. Let's do it here. Carol led the group to this place and stood opposite of Han Xiao, creating a large distance between them. Looking from afar, they looked like a small dot. Han Xiao looked around. This training ground was very wide, with tall mechanical towers at the edge. They were connected by dozens of blue high-temperature electromagnetic lines, looking like a sci-fi baseball field that had been enlarged many times. The ground was made of gray metal plates, and there were scorch marks left behind by explosions or scratches from sharp weapons everywhere. There were also quite a few dents. Clearly, this training ground was often used for training. In my territory, you have to follow my rules. Carol's voice came from afar. Firstly, the battle area is limited to this training ground. If you cause any damage outside, you'll bear the consequences. Secondly, you cannot cause any serious damage to the opponent, so don't worry, your life will not be in danger. As he spoke, Carol activated the training ground. The ground rumbled, and many holes appeared on the metal floor. Mechanical soldiers rose up one after another, surrounding Carol. All the mechanical towers at the edge of the training ground shook, and light shot out from the tops of the towers, forming a projection that showed the countdown of 3 minutes. Carol's lips curled up, and he said, "Don't say that I'm bullying you. Before the battle starts, you have 3 minutes to prepare. Once the 3 minutes are up, this training ground will be covered by a protective shield." Black Star was a guest, so he definitely would not bring too many combat machines. They were most likely all on the spaceship, and he would be given 3 minutes to bring the machines to the training ground. After the protective shield covered the training ground, Black Star would not be able to receive any reinforcement from the outside and could only use the machines on the training ground to fight. As for Carol himself, he had an endless supply of troops. Since Combat Field number 30 was a facility that released machines from the ground for the trainers to fight, there were many tracks hidden in the metal plates on the ground that were connected to the underground logistics warehouse of Planet Heber. This meant that even with the protection of the protective shield, Carol could still receive endless reinforcements. Carol was very clear that a battle between two mechanic supers would most likely turn into a war of attrition. Black Star's forces were limited, and his forces were unlimited. He was already in an undefeatable position. The protective shield was transparent, so he could trample on Black Star in public. He could basically foresee the outcome of the battle. Black Star's machinery would be exhausted, and the ground would be filled with wreckage. Black Star himself would be heavily surrounded by his troops, and he would be able to look down on Black Star with ease and make Black Star admit defeat. Ames wanted her subordinates to help her vent her anger and defeat her subordinates. This way, she would lose even more face. Moreover, he did not hide the fact that he had the home advantage. If Black Star were to back out and cancel the challenge, Ames would also lose face. In any case, it was a sure win for him. Carol revealed a confident smile. On the other side, Han Xiao was not surprised by Carol's advantage at all. He sent a message to Rista, asking him to drive the Blacklight stealth over and drop the army boxes. Ames was still standing at the side, and she softly said, "Black Star, are you confident?" "A little," Han Xiao casually replied. "Then I believe in you." Ames's tone was as gentle as a warm breeze. Although she also felt that Han Xiao's challenge to Carol was very sudden, it was clear that Han Xiao was helping her vent her anger. She was inexplicably happy. She had always had a lot of trust in Han Xiao, and this time was no exception. She patted Han Xiao's shoulder, turned around, and walked out of the venue with Hela and Aurora. They stepped onto the tall building beside the battlefield and watched the battle from above. Around the battlefield, there were people climbing up the buildings to watch the battle. They were all members of the Bloodshed Land, and there were hundreds of them. They were all officers or elite warriors of the Bloodshed Land. Malekith and a few Vanguard officials were among them, forming different small groups and whispering to each other. The news of the battle between Carol and Black Star was not deliberately hidden. It spread like wildfire, and it soon reached the ears of many officers. They all came over to watch the battle curiously. Black Star is actually so daring to challenge our officers in our territory. A Vanguard official looked at the rice-sized figure in the field and clicked his tongue in wonder. He challenged Carol because he's a traitor of Floating Dragon. That must be the case. A few days ago, Ames was forced to retreat by His Excellency Tyrant. She probably felt indignant, so she asked Black Star to fight for her. It would be embarrassing if he lost. Someone could not help but look at Ames, who was also watching the battle, and speculated. Maybe Ames will intervene at the critical moment and interrupt the battle. Carol's combat strength, tisk. Malekith shook his head slightly. The Vanguard official's impression of Carol was very complicated. On one hand, it was because he was a traitor. Although the tyrant was magnanimous, his identity as a traitor would obviously make others unwilling to get close to Carol. On the other hand, Carol belonged to the logistics department and had almost no chance to fight. Unlike the Vanguard officials, who were all famous members of the Bloodshed Land, Malekith and the others did not have a clear understanding of Carol's strength. They only knew that he was also great. However, with the battlefield advantage, he won't lose. In the palace, Heber was still chatting with Austin, exchanging feelings. This time, Austin's expression suddenly changed, and he said with a strange tone, "Tyrant, there seems to be a problem in your territory." Heber frowned, took out his communicator, pressed a few buttons, and received a report from his subordinate. Black Star is challenging Carol. Austin chanted a spell, and the space fluctuated. A huge mirror appeared, showing the scene of the battlefield in real time. "Looks like they're about to fight. Aren't you going to stop them?" Austin asked. Heber looked at the mirror, thought for a while, shook his head, and said, "Since Ames is not bullying the weak, there's no need for me to stop a normal battle. What if your people lose? My Bloodshed Land is not a sore loser." Heber's expression was normal as he pointed at the mirror and said, "Continue watching. Don't stop." At the same time, 3 guests were following a Bloodshed Land soldier around. The representative of the Amethyst civilization, Ralph, was walking side by side with a Clint High official, chatting happily. The diplomatic relationship between Purple Crystal and Clint had always been good. Behind them, the leader of a super financial group was following the two of them. His name was Rassos, and he had a wide range of businesses. He had investments in both star clusters and could be considered a friend of Ralph and the Clint High official. While the 3 of them were discussing business issues, a series of figures suddenly flew past the buildings above, attracting their attention. "Where are those people going?" Ralph asked curiously. The soldier shook his head and said, "I don't know. They seem to be heading to training ground number 30. Just as he finished speaking, another series of figures flashed across the sky, followed by a black spaceship that sped past quickly. The 3 of them were all very knowledgeable people, and they immediately recognized that the spaceship was the Radiant Federation's Lurker-grade spaceship. Among all the guests, there seemed to be only one person piloting the Blacklight Stealth. Floating Dragon Island's Black Star. The Clint High official was immediately interested. "Something seems to have happened. Let's go take a look." Ralph shrugged, indicating that he did not mind. Rassos did not have any objections either. When there was 1.5 minutes left on the countdown, the Blacklight Stealth arrived above the training ground. The belly of the spaceship opened, and 6 army boxes were spat out. They were like 6 falling meteors, dragging long trails of flames behind them. Han Shao raised his hand toward the sky, and tree-shaped lightning bolts struck the 6 army boxes. The boxes opened in midair, and compressed orbs fell like rain, crashing onto the ground. Crack! The moment they landed, these compressed orbs expanded and turned into 6 mech legion. The Mechanical Beast Guards Army, Assault Artillery Regiment, G1 Steel Legion, G2 Heavy Armor Cavalry, and Mini-Cube Army occupied a portion of the training ground, surrounding and protecting Han Shao in a preset formation, making him feel like he was in a sea of machines. The 12 Oath Keepers of the Elite Army stood beside Han Shao. From head to toe, their outer armor moved like waves, like moving scales, carrying out an automatic inspection. All kinds of cannons landed behind them or floated in midair. Other than the conventional electromagnetic cannons and laser cannons, there were also the new plasma cannons and thermal cannons. There are a little too many troops. Carol was slightly surprised. However, he was still very confident. Black Star's Mech Legion only occupied a small portion of the training ground, but his own mechanical army was much larger, occupying almost half of the training ground. Their numbers were still increasing. There was a circle of mechanical transportation holes at the edge of the training ground, and standard mechanical soldiers crawled out one after another, surrounding Black Star's troops. The almost endless reinforcements were the source of Carol's confidence. To accumulate so many machines, Black Star must have spent a lot of time and money. Malice flashed across Carol's eyes. If we destroy all of his machines, Black Star's combat strength will drop by a few levels, and his accumulation will be destroyed. The formation was completed. As there would be a protective shield later, Han Xiao did not use the Eye of God. He checked the machines, and there were only a dozen seconds left on the countdown. The mechanical towers at the edge of the training ground were activated, and a light blue barrier slowly rose, covering the training ground. All the spectators were blocked outside. The dome was a few hundred meters tall, and when the barrier completely closed and turned into a protective shield, the countdown would end. Countless mechanical soldiers were ready to move. The style, technology, and model of the machines controlled by Carol were clearly different from Han Xiao's. Most of them were standard cannon fodder. Buzz! The two of them released their mechanical force at the same time. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. The skills of calamity-grade mechanics had an effect when using mechanical force instantly covered the entire training ground. After so long, I've finally met a mechanic of the same level. Han Xiao narrowed his eyes. This was the first high-level battle. The Berserk 8 mechanical suit appeared, and a virtual screen popped up in front of him, showing the image of virtual intrusion. Carol, on the other hand, was not of the virtual intrusion school. He put on a single soldier mecha, and right after, sections of armor extended out, quickly becoming a 30-meter-tall heavy fortress that wrapped around Carol tightly. The thick and heavy outer armor showed that its defensive power was shocking at first glance. From the gaps of the fortress, countless large-caliber cannons extended out. Carol belonged to the heavy mech school of the armed mech school. It was large in size, heavy in weight, thick in armor, and strong in firepower. It was a set of defensive heavy mech vehicles. Carol wanted to use its advantage in a war of attrition, so it covered itself with a hard turtle shell. He was not Han Xiao, and he did not have a strong body. He was most afraid of sudden attacks, so he used defensive tactics, trying to make sure that Han Xiao could not even touch him. The right way. Malekith and the other spectators all nodded. They did not feel that Carol was a coward. This was a strategy that was suitable for the situation. The moment Carol's fortress was formed, the barrier completely closed, and the countdown ended. Boom! The next moment, lasers and cannons roared. The battle suddenly erupted. Han Zhao's Mech Legion clashed with Carol's mechanical army. Bang! Bang! The two armies fought fiercely, and the scene instantly became chaotic. Machines could not speak, and they fought in silence. Metal rubbed against metal, and bright sparks were produced. The clanging sounds replaced the roars and battle cries. Machines were torn apart one after another. Machines could not make any screams, only the sound of electric sparks. Boom! The large caliber cannons of Carol's heavy fortress locked onto Han Xiao from afar and fired. The recoil caused the cannons to retract, and the sound of the cannons firing was like a heavy hammer hitting steel, and the echo was still buzzing. Huge light cannons headed straight for Han Xiao, and the high temperature caused the air to distort. Just as the large caliber light cannons were about to hit Han Xiao, the Watcher instrument appeared behind Han Xiao, like a peacock spreading its tail, and flew in front of Han Xiao, turning into a distorted force field shield. The light cannons hit the shield, but did not explode. Instead, they were deflected in all directions. Bang! Bang! All the light cannons were deflected. Some flew far away, hit the protective shield, and exploded violently. Some landed on the ground, causing strong winds in different parts of the battlefield and blowing up a large number of mechanical soldiers. Both sides had a portion of their forces. Han Xiao glanced around, and with a clench of his fist, mechanical force struck all the parts on the ground. 1. He pulled up a portion of his mechanical soldiers and continued to fight. Seeing this, Carol stopped attacking Han Xiao, and the heavy fortress started to fire at Han Zhao's mech legion, wanting to destroy Black Star's troops as soon as possible. You want to hide and fire? Do you think it's that easy? Han Xiao snorted coldly. He raised his hand, and a series of compressed orbs shot out from the tube on his wrist. They expanded in midair, turning into more than 10 mechanical hands. The next second, these mechanical hands transformed and combined into a 100-meter-sized Buddha's palm, 3 times the size of Carol's heavy fortress. Han Xiao waved his hand, and the Buddha's palm slammed down. The palm pressed on the top of the heavy fortress like a palm hitting a ping-pong ball. Boom! The strong wind caused by the collision blew away the surrounding mechanical soldiers. Even through the protective shield, the eyelids of Malekith and the others, who were watching the battle from the outside, twitched. The metal ground cracked and caved in from the heavy pressure, but the heavy fortress was covered by a layer of shield and did not suffer much damage. Inside the heavy fortress, Carol sneered. This fortress was not ordinary, but an important piece of combat equipment that he had researched. It was able to defend against calamity-grade attacks. Right at this time, Carol felt the fortress suddenly shake violently. The Buddha's palm bent his fingers and pulled the heavy fortress out of the ground. With a swing of his hand, he threw the heavy fortress as though it was a softball. It flew a long distance and crashed heavily into the protective shield, causing a series of blinding electric sparks to explode. Boom! A loud bang. The Bloodshed Land elites watching from outside the protective shield saw a large black shadow flying toward them. The shadow grew larger and larger in their vision, and they were so frightened that they almost slipped and fell. The heavy fortress rolled and landed on the ground, shaking the ground. However, the shield still protected the fortress loyally, and the damage was negligible. Its defense was amazing. Only Carol, who was piloting inside, felt pain in his butt. Chapter 601. The defense of this fortress is not bad. It's grade A equipment. Han Xiao raised his eyebrows, and a hint of excitement flashed across his eyes. Carol's information popped up on the interface. His level was higher than Han Zhao's, and some of his attributes and skills were filled with question marks. Han Xiao was not surprised by this. He was only level 142, and even in normal grade A equipment was higher than him. The defense of the heavy fortress was very high, but it was not to the point where it was indestructible. However, Han Xiao did not want to fight head-on. As a virtual mechanic, he still had some professional integrity. Without saying anything, he started virtual intrusion and passed the control of the Buddha's palm to Philip. Philip, play with him. Block his cannon fire. Don't let him kill my army. Order confirmed. Starting execution. The Buddha's palm slapped out again, and a propulsive flame suddenly shot out from the bottom of the heavy fortress. The heavy fortress instantly rose into the air, dodging this attack and moving quickly in the sky. This was a flying fortress. The Buddha's palm chased after the heavy fortress and performed a duet in midair. Han Xiao focused on virtual intrusion, and the Mech Legion on both sides fought fiercely. The 5 Mech Legion that were equipped with brand new equipment had their lethality increased by more than just a little. The blue-green plasma cannons exploded steel, the heat cannons melted metal, and the space distortion bombs were like small black holes, creating a vortex of distortion wherever they hit. There was no need to even mention the small thermonuclear mines. These were all cute little mushroom plants. The Cube Army was formed into 3 types of troops. The normal-sized cube robots, the small combined mechanical soldiers that were half the height of human, and the small giant-like robots. Each of them had their own advantages. Some were nimble, and some were heavy. It was as if the G2 heavy armored cavalry were unstoppable, slaughtering their way in and out of the enemy's formation. All sorts of cold, close combat weapons crushed countless enemies into pieces, and like a piece of eraser, they constantly drew blank spaces on the battlefield. The performance of Han Zhao's mech legion was obviously a level higher than the standard mechanical soldiers controlled by Carol. They could be considered half an elite. The killing efficiency was like harvesting, and Carol's mechanical army fell one after another. As soon as they clashed, Han Zhao's mech legion had the upper hand. However, the reinforcements came in an endless stream, and they couldn't kill them all. More and more corpses piled up on the ground. Carlos was determined to use up all of Han Zhao's assets. He didn't even direct his troops to attack Han Zhao. He only focused on cutting off Han Zhao's wings. He didn't care even if it was 3 for 1. Han Zhao was not without losses either. The 5 regular legions were also slowly losing their combat strength. The mechanical soldiers that occasionally approached Han Zhao were either shot to pieces by the Watcher instrument or smashed to pieces by the Oathkeepers. This kind of war of attrition was equivalent to a bladder game. How long are they going to fight? One of the Vanguard officials couldn't help but ask. Malekith shook his head. It will take at least a few hours. At this time, another figure jumped up. When the other Vanguard officials looked over, they were all shocked. Second brother, you're here, too. Yes, the chief asked me to come and take a look. The newcomer was a tall and skinny humanoid species. He was tall and looked like a refreshing stream in the bloodshed land that was filled with muscular men. This person's nickname was Jaeger. There were different styles in the pugilist class. Not only did he have a violent style, but he also walked the path of the high agility weapon style. He was the second of the 8 Vanguard officials, ranking second. The 8 Vanguard officials also had different ranks. The Chief Vanguard was the eldest, the most experienced, and the strongest. He had always been personally taught by Heber and was grade A+. He was also a training maniac and spent almost all of his free time in the gravity training room. The difference between him and the others was obvious. The second Jaeger was also very strong. The two of them usually carried out more dangerous missions and were very elusive. Their sudden appearance at this time shocked the other Vanguard officials. Looking at the battle situation, Jaeger quickly analyzed the situation and slowly said, Black Star seems to have the upper hand on the surface, but he's actually in a passive position. Carol wants to fight a protracted battle, and Black Star has to end the battle quickly. If he can't break through Carol's defense quickly, the situation will take a turn for the worse when his troops suffer too many losses. I think so too. Malekith nodded and paused. However, the current situation is very good. Carol has the location advantage, and his combat power is also very high. Black Star's chances are slim. Carol is not bad, right? Jaeger nodded lightly, acknowledging Carol's strength. On the other side, the 3 Clint officials also arrived and climbed up the building to watch the battle. After asking the bystanders around them, they finally understood the cause and effect of the battle. Black Star actually dared to openly challenge one of Bloodshed Land's officers in their territory? How daring. Ralph was quite surprised. He's taking revenge for Ames, right? A current officer of Floating Dragon challenging a former traitor. How meaningful is that? The Clint official chuckled. Ralph nodded and turned to look at Ames, who was not far away. He realized that Ames was staring at the battle with a focused expression. Rumble. The cannon fire was endless, and the battle was still going on. Both sides continued to fight, and the situation gradually reached a stalemate. Suddenly, Carol's heavy fortress sped up and shook off the Buddha's palm. It suddenly started to change shape. The heavy machinery broke down and turned into mechanical parts before being reassembled. At the same time, Carol threw out a bunch of compressed orbs, which expanded into new parts. Countless parts quickly merged together. In the blink of an eye, the parts that filled the sky formed a large humanoid mechanical suit that was 30 to 40 meters tall. Large battle mech, giant soldier, ship destroyer. The ship destroyer giant soldier was humanoid in shape. It had 2 hands and 2 legs, but it did not have a head. Its top was the conical end of its torso. Its appearance was black and green, and its thick armor covered its joints and vital points. Its body was wide at the top and narrow at the bottom. Its legs were equipped with thrusters and track wheels, and its body was filled with all kinds of weapons. On its back was a pair of steel-like thrusters. To describe it more down to earth, this thing was like an inverted green trash, kin with arms, legs, and wings. Carol looked down at Han Xiao coldly before sitting in the cockpit at the center of the torso. Bang! After the ship destroyer landed, it rolled agilely, and its huge body shook the ground. Then it squatted on the ground and swung the heat fusion chainsword in one hand. The armor on the other hand opened up and turned into a thick and heavy alloy shield. The heavy mech faction relied on all kinds of large and giant machines to fight. This kind of large mechanical suit was usually called the giant soldier mech. Its 30 to 40 meters tall body was comparable to some small spaceships. With such a large body, more power structures or energy cores could be stuffed into it. Its performance was very strong, and it could fight in the universe directly. It was equivalent to a more flexible galactic vehicle. Virtual mechanics participated in the universe war through invasions, while Heavy Mech faction could create such a giant soldier to fight against battleships. The ship destroyer giant soldier held the alloy shield and charged forward. Its huge feet made the ground shake, and the shield smashed onto the Buddha's palm. The huge force knocked the Buddha's palm to the side, and the mechanical hand that was twice its size was knocked back. Then, it swung the heat fusion chainsword and swept across the battlefield. Whew! The high-temperature incandescent light swept across the battlefield, creating a large blank space. Regardless of friend or foe, countless mechanical soldiers were shredded into parts by the heavy heat fusion chainword. Han Xiao narrowed his eyes. The Watcher instrument turned into a large-caliber floating cannon, and a blue light beam as thick as a water bucket shot out and hit the ship destroyer giant soldier's chest. A light yellow shield appeared and blocked this high-energy light beam. It exploded into light fragments, but the ship destroyer giant soldier's body was not harmed. He even brought out a Gundam. He's really going all out. Han Xiao curled his lips. He was not surprised at all. He had been peeping every day for the past few days and had seen Carol maintaining this giant soldier mech. The class advancement of the mechanic class would also affect the result of the blueprint fusion. If he chose one of the branches, other than the cutting-edge knowledge consumption of the other two branches being 3 times higher, there was another restriction, which was that the blueprints of the other two branches could not be fused. Han Xiao chose virtual mechanic. When he gambled on blueprints, he could not get a part of the heavy mech-style blueprints, such as the ship-destroyer giant soldier mech Carol brought out, the giant soldier mech obviously not to deal with Han Xiao alone. It was like using a cannon to kill a mosquito. His goal was to use the giant soldier mech to quickly wipe out Black Star's mech legion. Originally, he did not plan to use the ship-destroyer as his trump card. However, the quality of Black Star's mech legion was beyond his expectations. His cannon fodder troops died too quickly, and the replacements could not keep up. If he did not bring out the giant soldier, Carol was worried that he would lose control of the situation. Carol has changed from defense to offense. I can feel the energy waves of this giant soldier mech. It's very strong. Even if it's me, it will take a very long time to destroy it. Outside the shield, Malekith raised his voice and looked at Carol in a new light. Jaeger nodded. That's more like it. Far away in the palace, Heber looked at the live broadcast and nodded to express his approval. At this time, a sudden change occurred on the battlefield. All the mechanical soldiers on the battlefield suddenly stopped as if someone had pressed the freeze button. Carol's face was filled with shock. Just as he was about to control the ship destroyer to move, he realized that there was a static noise coming from the control panel. The artificial intelligence did not respond at all, and the nerve connection control directly failed. The ship destroyer stood in place and did not move at all. It was like the entire battlefield was filled with machines. The battlefield that was filled with gunfire suddenly became dead silent. The change was extremely sudden. The sudden change caused the expressions of all the spectators to freeze. Ding! The Berserk Ape's virtual intrusion interface rang. Han Xiao clenched his fists and chuckled. His voice spread out, and it was extremely clear on the battlefield where a pin drop could be heard. Everyone could hear it. All right, the foreplay is over. Han Shao knew that Carol had the battlefield advantage, and he did not have the heart to fight a war of attrition. The reason he used the Mech Legion was to stall the enemy troops and give himself time to perform his virtual intrusion. Now, with the support of Rista and Philip, the virtual intrusion was complete. These standard machines were all controlled by the same artificial intelligence. After being hammered by Rista, they lost control directly. All the machines under Carol's control were paralyzed and could only recover after the system rebooted. Making use of this opportunity, Han Shao walked toward the ship destroyer Colossal Soldier. Dong, dong, dong. As he walked forward, rows of mechanical soldiers fell. All of them had their systems malfunctioning, and the scene was magnificent. It was as if the people were bowing down to welcome their emperor. 2 words, awesome. Han Zhao's path was unobstructed. This was the easiest time for him. Virtual mechanics were the best at internal conflicts. As the old saying went, without guns and cannons, the enemy will build them for us. Carol looked at all his machines being destroyed by Han Shao from the cockpit of the ship destroyer. His expression was extremely ugly, and he felt extremely humiliated. As a mechanic, when the machines in his hands were forcefully taken away by someone else, this feeling was indescribable. It was as if he had lost all his dignity. Quick, restart the system. Carol roared. Diagnosing malfunction and removing virus. Estimated time. Unknown. The system alarm echoed in the cockpit, bringing with it an ear-piercing noise. *T, it's too late. Carol finally panicked when he saw Han Shao approaching. However, he still held on to his last shred of hope. In order to speed things up, Black Star had only used the most violent method to paralyze the ship destroyer's operating system. He did not take control of it, so he could still hide in the ship destroyer. As long as Han Shao could not destroy the ship destroyer's armor before the system rebooted, he would still have a chance to regain control of the situation. However, the next moment, Carol's heart sank to the bottom. Han Zhao's Mech Legion all aimed at the ship destroyer. Endless bullets covered the sky, and the ship destroyer's high-energy shield only lasted 2 seconds under the terrifying firepower before shattering. Boom! The armor on its chest and abdomen was focused on and exploded. The ship destroyer could not withstand the force and fell to the ground face up. The Buddha's palm disintegrated and turned into more than 10 mechanical hands. They turned into drills and drilled a hole in the ship destroyer's body. Carol's cockpit was exposed amidst the messy wires and energy pipes. Due to the system's paralysis, Carol could not even eject to escape. The ship destroyer had become his prison instead. Looking at Han Shao, who jumped into the cockpit, Carol's face was filled with fear. He hurriedly said, "I admit." Before he could finish, Han Zhao's large hand pinched his mouth like a pair of iron pliers, forcing Carol's words back into his stomach. Go. Berserk throw. Dong. Carol was thrown out of the ship destroyer and flew into the sky. He flew up hundreds of meters and slammed into the dome of the training ground's protective shield. He did not have a strong body. Although he was a calamity-grade super, his body's resistance was far inferior to that of a pugilist. This collision caused him to feel dizzy, and he was inflicted with the dizzy status of the berserk throw. However, before he fell, Carol's vision blurred, and Han Shao flew below him in an instant. The distance of a few hundred meters was just a matter of acceleration for the berserk ape mechanical suit, leaving behind a trail of blue flames. Zap! The next second, blinding lightning burst out from Han Zhao's body and illuminated Carol's shocked expression. His arms were like a bow that was pulled to the limit. Then his fists landed heavily on Carol's chest and pressed him against the dome of the protective shield. Boom! It was like a ball of lightning had exploded out of thin air. Power explosion. Genetic liberation. Germinal organization leader character summon card. Armor-piercing combo. Han Shao did not hold back at all in this attack. With the triple enhancement, the power of this attack was raised to a terrifying level. Boom! An explosive sound wave swept out, and a circular shock wave burst out. The power of this punch passed through Carol's body and directly shattered the protective shield that covered the entire training ground. In the sky full of light, Carol shot up into the sky like a rocket, leaving rings of shockwaves behind. Crimson blood splattered in the air. All the bloodshed land spectators at the scene opened their mouths wide and looked up at Carol, who was flying into the sky. Malekith was stunned. In just 10 seconds, Han Shao had broken the battle of attrition and ended the battle. Too fast. Chapter 602. Carol flew higher and higher. Swoosh! Just as the other spectators were in a daze, Jaeger was the first to react. He jumped up and flew into the sky, catching up to Carol, who had been sent flying out of the arena. He grabbed Carol with both hands and lifted him up like a chicken, not giving Carol the chance to shout, "I'll be back." The two of them landed in the middle of the arena filled with mechanical wreckage, raising a cloud of dust. As soon as Jaeger let go, Carol fell forward, one hand on the ground, the other on his chest, coughing violently. Cough, cough. Blood flowed out of Carol's mouth, and his face was pale. Although he was wearing a simple combat suit, this punch still caused him quite a bit of damage. However, he still had the physique of a calamity grade. Even if he was not as strong as a pugilist, he would not lose his combat ability in one hit. He only broke a few bones and almost lost a lung. Although Han Shao did not hold back in this punch, he also knew that a calamity grade would not be so easily injured. Furthermore, this spar did not go too far, and it was impossible for him to kill someone in Bloodshed Lands territory. It was enough to defeat his opponent openly. Virtual intrusion had created an opportunity, and Han Shao had always been good at seizing opportunities. Furthermore, he was very cautious. In order to prevent himself from failing miserably, he did not play around with Carol and directly sent him flying, securing victory. Carol's injuries were not too serious, and he still had the ability to continue fighting. However, he was sent out of the arena, and the machinery he controlled was temporarily paralyzed. Even if he could recover his combat ability after the system rebooted, the current situation was that he had been publicly defeated by Black Star. The battle was over, and it ended with his defeat. Carol's face was filled with unwillingness. He held his chest and coughed a few more times, staring at Han Shao, who had also landed not far away. That was close. I almost lost. Han Shao put away the berserk ape, revealed his face, and shook his head. Bullsh *T. You clearly did it with ease. Many spectators roared in their hearts. Han Shao glanced at the virtual intrusion interface. There was not much time left, and the opponent's artificial intelligence was about to restart. He looked around and said playfully, "You lost. With so many people watching, you won't go back on your word, right?" Carol sensed that the gazes of the spectators had all landed on him, and he couldn't help but gnash his teeth. His mentality collapsed. He had a huge advantage in terms of location, but he was easily defeated by Black Star. This guy's battle strength was really too strong. The difference in their statuses aggravated the impact of his defeat. Black Star was the current officer of Floating Dragon Island, but he was a traitor in the eyes of others. Now that the traitor was defeated by someone from Floating Dragon Island, it was a scene that the people loved to see. Furthermore, he had just provoked Ames a few days ago, and today, he was defeated by Black Star. Carol felt extremely embarrassed. Carol subconsciously looked in the direction of Ames, but he realized that Ames was not even looking at him, the loser. Instead, she was staring at Black Star. This made him even angrier. In the spectator seats outside the venue, Ames let out a sigh of relief and revealed a relaxed smile. Just as Black Star sent Carol flying with a thunderous blow, she felt all the anger that she had been suffering for the past few days disappear. With Han Zhao's fist, she vented all of it, and her mood instantly became bright and sunny. For a moment, Ames only felt that Han Shao was extremely pleasing to the eye, and she stared at him with all her might. As for Carol, who she had always missed, Ames did not even want to look at him again. The position of this traitor in her eyes had become insignificant, and she had already put this traitor down in her heart. "I found someone better than me," Ames mumbled. "The Dragon Emperor has really found an amazing person." Not far away, Ralph sighed. He had only gotten to know Black Star a few days ago, and at this moment, Han Zhao's position in his heart had risen slightly. If there was a chance in the future, perhaps he could outsource some sensitive missions to Black Star. Ralph pondered, and the thought of hiring him appeared in his mind. The Amethyst civilization controlled Colton, and the Black Star Corps was stationed in Colton as well. There was a natural basis for cooperation. Rasatsi rubbed the antennae under his chin. His expression did not change, but he thought to himself, "I heard that the Norios financial group invested in the Black Star Corps. It does have potential. Seems like it's worth investing in." After socializing a few days ago, he had also gotten to know Black Star. As there were many hidden experts in the party, he did not express any special thoughts about Han Xiao. Only now did he have the intention to invest. The Clint senior official narrowed his eyes, and a strange expression flashed across his face. He suddenly said, "Black Star defeated the tyrant's people in Bloodshed Land. I wonder what Heber will do." The other two narrowed their eyes. Not far away, Malekith and the other Vanguard officials were also thinking about this question. Will His Excellency Tyrant interfere? Someone frowned. Malekith shook his head and did not say anything. This is just a spar. He probably won't. Carol's defeat was already a foregone conclusion. The Vanguard officials were used to battles and were not too surprised or shocked by the result. They were only surprised by the combat strength Black Star had displayed. Many of the Vanguard officials were excited and want to have a real fight with Han Xiao. What they were most concerned about now was Heber's attitude. At the same time, in the palace, your people lost. Austin's tone was mocking. "I have eyes." Heber frowned and waved his hand. "I'm not watching anymore. Turn it off." "Yeah. Aren't you going to respond?" "There's no need." Heber was not angry. Since it was a fair battle, Black Star had won fair and square. That was his ability. Hearing this, Austin could only end the broadcast, and the two of them stopped paying attention to this matter. The tyrant did not interfere, and no one felt that Heber did not know about this matter. Seeing this, they understood that Heber had tacitly agreed to the result of this battle. Bloodshed Land believed in the strong. Carol was publicly defeated, and the others felt that they had lost face. Many spectators shook their heads and turned to leave. Malekith and the others were disappointed. They glared at Carol before disappearing. Carol knew that the outcome was already decided. His expression was ugly, and he had nothing to say. "Don't forget our bet," Han Xiao reminded him kindly. "What blueprint do you want?" Carol clenched his teeth. The tyrant definitely knew about the bet, and if he went back on his word, he would be tarnishing Bloodshed Land's reputation. He had no choice but to give up his treasures and fulfill Han Zhao's request. "Let me think. That mechanical fortress of yours and that giant soldier mechanical suit, I want both of them." Han Xiao chuckled. "Okay." Carol's face twitched, and his heart was bleeding. Following which, Han Xiao stated his requirements for the other three blueprints. He had peeked into Carol's weapon warehouse and had quite a few things that he wanted. However, Carol had not used all of them in the battle, so Han Xiao could not specify them directly. As a virtual mechanic, although he could not fuse some of the exclusive machinery for his class advancement, the knowledge of the mechanic class was the same. If he obtained the blueprint, he could learn it directly. After all, when gambling on blueprints, there were dozens of blueprints that could be fused with one type of knowledge. His class advancement only prevented him from fusing some of the blueprints. However, if he had the blueprint first, as long as his knowledge met the requirements of the blueprint, he would be able to create the machinery for the blueprint. "I'll give you the blueprint tomorrow. You don't have to worry about me going back on my word. I still have this bit of credibility." Carol's face was filled with grievances. After saying this, he did not even bother to clean up the place and left, not even daring to look at Ames. Han Xiao did not mind and looked at the notification on the interface. Ames' rage completed. "Jay, you have received 1,500 EXP and plus 15 J renown, plus 2,500 J floating dragon faction relationship, plus 30 Ames favorability. Current relationship, Best friend, J +2 to Heber's favorability. Current relationship, cold, J this time. Ames landed beside Han Xiao with a smile. Not bad. I can't just watch you get bullied. Han Xiao laughed and found an excuse to explain his actions. I know. Ames smiled faintly and suddenly felt a little emotional. Ever since she became a beyond grade A super, she had not experienced the feeling of being protected for a very long time. She did not expect to have such a feeling again today. I'm clearly much stronger than Blackstar, but in the end, he actually helped me vent my anger. Ames laughed in her heart. Aurora raised her head and looked at Han Xiao, then at Ames. She tugged on Hella's clothes and said softly, "Sister, what?" Hella did not look at her and said with an indifferent tone, "In nothing." Aurora shrunk her neck. After storing his machinery into the blacklight stealth, Han Xiao and the others returned to their room. This challenge did not lead to any investigation, but through the news spread by the spectators, very soon, all the guests knew about the battle between Han Xiao and Carol. Blackstar was in Bloodshed Land, fighting for Ames, publicly defeating the former trader of Floating Dragon in someone else's territory, and the tyrant actually allowed it. This could be considered as Blackstar taking revenge for the Dragon Emperor, and many people were surprised. After the battle ended, the day passed peacefully. The next day, the official party finally began. Everyone had waited for a few days for today's official party. All the guests were dressed neatly and gathered in the hall of Heber's palace. This place had already been set up as a banquet venue, with all kinds of new and precious food and drinks. Musicians were on standby at the side. Not only the hall, almost half of the palace was the venue for the party. It was all set up, and the guests could look around freely. There were also many private rooms upstairs for guests who wanted to communicate privately. The goal of this party was to invite the top organizations of the Shattered Star Ring to discuss various topics, expand their connections, exchange information, outline the future of the Shattered Star Ring, and so on. Its function was similar to a social gathering, but it was more serious, practical, and high-end. The guests were talking to each other, and Ames stood at the side, ignoring everyone. Hella and Aurora were beside her, and they did not know what to say in such an occasion, so they did not say anything either. Han Xiao was around to replace Ames in socializing. From time to time, people would take the initiative to talk to him, and their attitudes were quite warm. He dealt with the guests while observing the others, silently collecting information. Not long after, the organizer of the party, Heber, finally appeared. The place instantly quieted down, and everyone stopped talking. They all looked at Heber, waiting for him to speak. I'm very happy to see so many familiar faces again. Chapter 603. The musicians started to play, and the party officially began. The guests all had their own interests, so they spread out and found a more private place to discuss business. Heber brought a few guests up the stairs. Not far away, the Clint High official also brought a few people up the stairs from the other side. Seeing this, Han Xiao could not help but narrow his eyes, deep in thought. The tyrant and the Clints are allies, and he has secretly sided with the Red Empire. Maybe the Clints have also become friends with the Red Empire, and it happened even earlier than the tyrant. After all, if the Red Empire wants to rope in the organizations in the Shattered Star Ring, their first choice should be the Star Cluster civilizations. The Clints were roped in first, and then they recommended their ally, the Bloodshed Land. The tyrant recommended the envoy to the Dragon Emperor and the Magus. It's very likely that the Clints asked him to communicate with the Beyond Grade as Han Zhao's thoughts turned quickly. This meant that among the 7-star cluster civilizations in the Shattered Star Ring, the Clint Kingdom had most likely sided with the Red Empire. Connecting it to the storyline in his previous life, the main storyline of version 3.0, Crimson Tide, was that the expansion of the Red Empire had shaken all the star fields, and the Shattered Star Ring was no exception. However, a lot of the chaos was not directly caused by the Red Empire, but by the organizations of the various star fields. At that time, the players did not know the inside story, but now, Han Xiao had connected the two. Maybe the organizations causing trouble in the Crimson Tide were all instructed by the Red Empire to cause chaos in the galaxy. Heber did not introduce Zoel to all the guests. It was probably because the Red Empire did not want to be too conspicuous and would only talk to the representatives of some of the stronger organizations in private, just like the Beyond Grade A meeting yesterday. The storm has already begun to brew. Han Xiao shook his head silently. According to his calculations, the impact of the Red Empire's actions would not appear in version 2.0 for the time being. The biggest possibility was that it would happen gradually in the 10 years after the version 2.0 update and evolve into version 3.0 Crimson Tide. Currently, it was still the early stages of version 2.0. Other than the Blue Star players, the players from the other novice planets were still playing in the mud. There were still a few years until the version update. During this time, the possibility of something big happening was very low. The Blue Star players' original main storyline was the battle between Darkstar and Ghidorah. Now that Darkstar had collapsed, the Black Star Corps had become the players' new main storyline. The storyline had become a semi-free exploration mode. Therefore, the players would not encounter any major events in version 2.0. This was the best time to develop a faction. While Han Technician was pondering, Rasatsi came over. Black Star, I have something to discuss with you. Sir Rassos, what do you suggest? Han Xiao came back to his senses, smiled slightly, and nodded in greeting. Rassos habitually rubbed the messy tentacles on his chin and said, I wish to invest in Floating Dragon in your Black Star Corps. Perhaps we should discuss the terms of cooperation in detail. Han Xiao's eyes sparkled. Whoa, I'm in luck. Another money giver. He turned around and took a look. Ames did not object and gave Han Xiao full authority to decide. Han Xiao then pulled Rassos to the side, and the two of them started to discuss the details. Not long after, the two of them quickly finalized the investment plan. The terms were similar to the Norios financial groups. Both financial groups would provide resources to Floating Dragon and the Black Star Corps for a long time in exchange for other benefits. Investing in armed forces had always been an important investment for large financial groups, and Rassos was no exception. After confirming the details, he walked away with satisfaction. The official contract and funds would be sent over after the meeting. Han Xiao was very happy. This way, the Black Star Corps would have one more sponsor, which would be very helpful for the development of the faction. Norios Financial Group and Rassos Financial Group were the financial backers of the Black Star Corps for the time being. Black Star. This time, someone called out to him. Han Xiao turned around and saw that the person who had spoken was Austin. He had brought a group of forbidden sorcerers with him. Your Excellency Magus, why are you looking for me? Facing a Beyond Grade A. Han Xiao's eyes were very solemn. Austin did not say anything. He smiled faintly and opened his palm. A deep blue light lit up in his palm, turning into a vortex. Very soon, the light disappeared, and a small gray ball appeared in his palm. Han Xiao took a closer look. This small ball was not a physical object, but a cluster of gray mist. It was surging but was compressed by some kind of energy, maintaining the shape of a small ball. Han Xiao was a little confused. He could not figure out Austin's intentions. Austin played with the gray mist ball and slowly said, Once, my spiritual body was roaming in a certain phantom-level secondary plane and encountered a powerful and strange Void Lord. It almost corroded my spiritual body, but I defeated it in the end. This is the core essence left behind by that Void Lord. I want to give it to you. Han Xiao was stunned. The core essence of a Void Lord was an extremely rare item. Almost only mages could collect this material. Traveling to secondary planes was an ability that only high-level mages had, and they could often obtain all kinds of strange items. In terms of profiteering, in terms of production, mages and mechanics were the best among the 5 superclasses. In terms of collecting materials, mages might even be better than mechanics. Mechanics were in a state of bankruptcy all year round, while mages were the opposite. A class that could burn mana to make money at 0 cost, enchantment, was practically the public enemy. They were not called mages for nothing. Han Xiao knew very well that one who was unaccountably solicitous was hiding evil intentions. What did Austin mean by suddenly giving him a gift? He could not be trying to steal him like Heber, right? Heber took the direct route. Could it be that Austin took the indirect route? Why are you giving it to me? Because I feel that you might need it more than me. Austin winked. Hearing this, Han Shao suddenly had an idea. Right, when I used Observer's Mark on Zoel yesterday, I was discovered by Austin. Could that be the reason? You're not a mage, but you can use void energy. Looks like you've been corroded by void genes before. Most species that are corroded by void genes end up becoming monsters, but you manage to control it and turn it into your own ability. You're very lucky. Since that's the case, the Void Lord's core essence can strengthen this ability and give you more power. Austin confirmed Han Zhao's guess. Austin did not know that Han Shao had the player interface. The way he saw it, Black Star being able to use void energy was only because he had been corroded by void genes. Furthermore, Floating Dragon Island happened to have void dragon skeletons buried there, so he thought that he had guessed what had happened. Thus, he wanted to help AIM's officers. In any case, it was a piece of cake for him. Han Shao could only cough and agree with Austin's words. He started to ponder in silence. He was already a void race, and the Void Lord's core essence could strengthen his void genes and increase his attributes. Furthermore, during the next race evolution, he would have a chance to skip the next stage of the evolution chain and enter the later stages, where stronger void species options would appear. It was indeed very useful. It was a good thing, and its rarity was at the level where it was priceless. What I have to pay? Han Shao narrowed his eyes. Although he was tempted, he knew that he should not accept something that he did not deserve. Austin had a lot of resources, and the Void Lord's core essence was just a drop in the ocean. However, he did not feel that Austin needed to give it to him. Even if Austin was helping AIM's officers because of her, Han Shao was not willing to accept the kindness of an unfamiliar beyond grade A. His relationship with Austin had not reached the point where he could accept a gift with a clear conscience. This is for you. You don't have to. Austin seemed to have thought of something. He suddenly changed his words halfway through his sentence. Perhaps there will be a day when I will need your help. Just treat this as an advance payment. Sounds good, as long as it doesn't go against my principles. Of course. Han Shao put the item in his pocket and nodded at Austin to thank him. Austin smiled, and his face looked very cute. He slowly said, Heber is a little stupid, and Ames is not attentive. I know your potential better than them. Maybe one day, you'll leave the Dragon Emperor and establish your own faction. This star field has not had a new legend for too long. I'll keep an eye on you. Don't disappoint me. Without waiting for Han Zhao's reply, Austin turned around and left with the forbidden sorcerers. Han Shao had a strange expression. Austin did not put on any airs, and his attitude was very friendly, giving him a good impression. However, what he said at the end made him feel like he was facing an elder. As the gathering went on, all the VIPs present had their own business to discuss. The guests chatted enthusiastically, and occasionally, someone would look for Han Shao to talk about some topics, but it was not frequent. Other than Rasatsi and Austin, the others who came to talk mostly just chatted. Han Shao was also happy to be free. When there was no one to talk to, Han Shao, Ames, and the other two would sit in a corner and enjoy food and drinks, talking and laughing. As time passed, the gathering gradually came to an end. Everyone basically got the information they wanted or the cooperation agreement. Han Shao also eavesdropped on some information that was not considered confidential, but that normal people would not know. After all, everyone present was a VIPs, and any information they casually revealed was quite valuable. Chapter 604. We will consider your request. Then, a star cluster civilization representative opposite Zoel stood up, bowed respectfully, and left the bright guest room. Zoel was the only one left in the room. Zoel shook his head slightly and took a sip from the wine glass on the table. The spicy amber wine flowed down his throat like a line of fire. He received more than 10 people representing the top organizations in the Shattered Star Ring, and every one of them was extremely respectful because of his identity. However, when it came to specific matters, everyone was vague. However, siding with the Red Empire was a very important decision that required a long time to consider. Zoel understood this point. The Shattered Star Ring was the territory of the Radiant Federation, but the star cluster civilizations were not the subordinates of the Radiant Federation. There was no loyalty to speak of. Every civilization was independent and only acknowledged the jurisdiction of the Radiant Federation. Every civilization had their own ambitions and wanted to expand, and the new star field was an opportunity. Currently, of the 7-star cluster civilizations in the Shattered Star Ring, only Clint is firmly siding with us. According to the current trend, we should be able to rope in some star cluster civilizations. Together with the Bloodshed Land, we should have enough chess pieces. The expansion ambitions of the Red Empire did not stop there. Zoel was only in charge of the Shattered Star Ring, and the other star fields also had their own special envoys. The new area outside the Shattered Star Ring was only one of the things that the Red Empire was looking for. It would take at least a few years to complete the initial layout. The gathering came to an end. Everyone had settled their business and gathered in the hall. Heber appeared again and gave a concluding speech, announcing the end of the gathering. The atmosphere of this gathering seemed relaxed, but it was actually filled with undercurrents. Who knew how many important matters that could affect countless people had been decided in private, and these were all decided by the big shots with just a few words. From the checks and balances between the various relationships, one could often peek into the workings of the galactic world and the nature of power. The right to speak was closely related to the amount of resources one could control. Han Xiao had also gained a lot. Not only did he know the inside story of the Red Empire's operation, but he was also mentally prepared for the next version update. He had also expanded his network and officially entered the circle of top organizations. Although he was mainly relying on his identity as a member of Floating Dragon Island and was still considered an outsider, this was a good start. If he had only relied on his current strength and organization, he would not have had the chance to participate in this gathering at all. Obtaining the qualifications to enter the circle was more important, and his position would slowly rise. If one were to quantify his connections, Han Zhao's connections had increased by dozens of times. In the past, most of the people he came into contact with were from star system civilizations and mercenaries. Now, he had the contact information of the top organizations in the Shattered Star Ring. If he encountered any problems in the future, he would be able to obtain more comprehensive and powerful help. The nickname Black Star Network was even more well-deserved. This time, he had even met the other two beyond Grade A supers of the Shattered Star Ring and met Austin. Everyone said goodbye to Heber and left. Han Xiao and the others walked out of the palace and immediately saw Carol, who was waiting outside with a long face. Black Star, this is the blueprint you asked for. Carol's face was ugly. He threw a new communicator to Han Xiao, which stored the information of 5 blueprints. After roughly looking at it and confirming that there was no problem with the blueprints, Han Xiao nodded and walked past him, not wanting to have any other interaction with Carol. Ims looked straight ahead and walked past Carol. Carol was left alone in an awkward position, feeling completely ignored. This time, a shadow blocked his vision. Carol raised his head and saw Heber standing beside him, looking down at him. "Your Excellency, Tyrant." Carol's face paled, and he stuttered, "Sorry, I lost this time." "Will you lose next time?" Heber said coldly. It was a simple sentence, and his tone did not have any intention of blaming Carol. As if he had been motivated, Carol replied loudly, "Definitely not. That's my subordinate." Heber nodded slowly, turned around, and walked away, leaving behind a stalwart figure. Han Xiao and the others did not plan to stay on planet Heber. They went straight to the dock, boarded the Blacklight Stealth, and left Bloodshed Land. Ames guided the two sisters in their training. Han Xiao let Rista control the spaceship, while he went to the training room to check the 5 blueprints that Carol had lost him. Among them, there was the heavy fortress used during sparring. Its official name was Flying Fortress. Its defense was amazing, and it could also be used as a flying vehicle. There was also the Ship Destroyer Giant Soldier Armor, which could replace spaceships as space weapons. Its mobility, armor value, destructive power, close range, and long-range capabilities were all very impressive. It was Han Zhao's first giant soldier armor blueprint. A heavy mechanic built heavy machinery, and the basic attributes of the machinery were usually stronger. These two things could be used as grade A combat equipment. The other three were also important blueprints for Carol. The first was a medium-sized armor that was 6 to 7 meters tall. It could be piloted by many people, had excellent performance, and was good at frontal attacks. It was suitable to be sold to guilds. The second was an anti-gravity electromagnetic levitation motorcycle. It had an ecological shield to resist cosmic radiation and could travel in space. Han Xiao had the Berserk 8 mechanical suit, so he did not need it. However, the specialty of this galactic motorcycle was that it looked cool. It could be an advanced product of the nuclear magnetic flying backpack. Of course, Han Xiao still needed to modify the blueprint and add a self-destruct function. The third was a large-caliber shipborne cannon. It was a blueprint for spaceships. Most of the shipborne weapons were heavy firearms, so their power was naturally much higher than portable weapons. The prerequisite knowledge for the 5 blueprints was mainly from the arm class. The highest knowledge was only high-end knowledge. After looking at the spoils of war, Han Xiao took out the essence core of the Void Lord and looked at it carefully. This small ball, condensed by gray fog, had a special feeling when he held it in his hand. It was ethereal, as if it did not exist. It was as if he could crush it, but once he used force, he would feel a repulsive force that was full of elasticity. The core of the Void Lord can strengthen the Void genes, just like the Void Dragon Marrow in the past, but the effect is stronger. Han Zhao's eyes flashed. In the hierarchy of the Void species, the Void Lord belonged to the top level. Most of them existed in the secondary planes in the eyes of mages, or hid in the Void vision. They rarely interfered with reality. The Void Lord could be considered a type of higher dimensional life form. Similar existences were magic entities. They condensed void energy to form a shell and projected reality. They were ever-changing. Even in the sea of stars where all kinds of races bloomed, they were still very rare and strange life forms. This was not the first time he had used such an item. Swallowing the core of the Void Lord was quite beneficial to him. Normally, there would be risks when using species genetic items, but the compatibility between species was very high, so the chances of side effects were very small. He opened his mouth and swallowed the gray fog ball. An extremely cold feeling exploded from his mouth and spread throughout his body in an instant. It was as if even his soul was being frozen. You have used the core of the Void Lord. Fusion progress, 38%, 61%, 100% fusion complete. Fusion, perfect attributes increased permanently. Plus 8 STR, plus 12 DX, plus 10 END, plus 10 INT, plus 15 MYS, plus 8 Sichi your talent. Intermediate strength in life has been slightly strengthened. The cold quickly disappeared, and Han Xiao exhaled. After seeing the notification on the interface, his eyes could not help but light up. The attribute bonus was very impressive, and his total attributes increased by 63 points. What was even more surprising was that there was a clear notification for intermediate strength in life. This talent had accompanied him for a very long time and provided him with a large amount of health. When the talent was upgraded the last time, Han Xiao guessed that he would need to use more genetic items without side effects to continue strengthening this talent. The Void Lord's core proved his guess. Although the effect of intermediate strength in life did not change and had not been upgraded, since there was a notification, it meant that his train of thought was correct. Han Xiao decided to make collecting rare materials of Void species as a new mission. Han Xiao first sent Ames and the others back to Floating Dragon Island, and the return journey was very peaceful. After returning to Floating Dragon Island, the Blacklight stealth stopped at the dock. Ames and the others walked down the gangway and turned to look at Han Xiao, who was beside the hatch. Han Xiao turned to look at Hela and the others, smiled, and said, "You two follow the Dragon Emperor and train well. I'm still waiting for you to help me." Aurora raised her hand and said with a serious face, "I'll definitely work hard." Hela opened her mouth, but did not know what to say. She suddenly realized that the two of them were going to be separated again. They would be training on the unfamiliar floating dragon island and starting a new life. It might be a very long time before she saw Han Xiao again. Hela could not help but think of the time when she stayed in Blue Star and looked up at the stars. Her emotions could not help but become complicated. Hela knew that she did not know Han Xiao well. The chances of the two of them spending time together were actually very limited, and they spent more time apart than together. When the words reached her mouth, she hesitated and said softly, "Be careful." "Got it, I'm leaving." Han Xiao waved his hand, and the hatch closed, covering his figure. The next moment, the spaceship took off and disappeared into the distance. Ames turned to the two sisters, stopped smiling, and said calmly, "Next, you two will start your official training. I'll be very strict." I couldn't ask for more. Hela took a deep breath and said with a serious expression, After leaving Floating Dragon Island, the Blacklight Stealth entered hyperdrive mode and flew toward planet Sunil. Going to the Sol Cluster to participate in the Tyrant's party had taken a lot of time. During this time, the Black Star Corps had been maintaining business, and the players had not encountered any major problems. Everything was normal. Not long ago, Herluz had sent news that after a few months of work by 200,000 players, the Sunils had finally made a breakthrough and eliminated a large number of prophecy stone mines. The strength of the psychic current had decreased significantly. According to this trend, they would be able to completely eliminate the threat of the catastrophe very soon and save the Sunils from this disaster. However, as they gradually dug deeper into the mines, they discovered some strange phenomena, and Herluz requested Han Xiao to personally assist them. The inside story that he had learned from the Tyrant's party gave Han Xiao quite a sense of urgency. He wanted to speed up the development of the Black Star Corps, so he decided to personally make a trip to planet Sunil to completely solve the Sunil's predicament. At the same time, he would also conduct an on-site inspection and prepare to build the third subbase. Chapter 605, Planet Sunil. The sky was a sapphire blue, and the pure white clouds were like floating ribbons. A gentle breeze blew, carrying a thin mist through the dense forest, and the lush green trees swayed like waves. The freshness of nature had not been buried yet. Green was a good color. Looking at the surface through the porthole, Han Xiao could not help but feel refreshed. The Blacklight Stealth slowly landed in the military camp area outside of Forest City. Herluz had been waiting there for a long time with the Sunil upper echelons. In the distance, a large number of armored Sunil soldiers were patrolling. As soon as Han Xiao walked down the porthole, Herluz rushed up and gave him a warm hug. "Black Star, you're finally here." Han Xiao patted Herluz's shoulder and asked him to let go. Herluz excitedly introduced the Sunil upper echelons to Han Xiao one by one. Both parties shook hands and greeted each other. The Sunil upper echelons were very respectful. Black Star's position in the galaxy was far higher than the entire Sunil race. Furthermore, Black Star had taken the initiative to help them solve the hidden danger of the planet. They would never forget this favor. After some introductions, they started to talk about serious matters. Han Xiao asked, "How's the situation now?" "Great." Herluz was very excited. In the past few months, he was the clearest about the effect of the Black Star Corps. It had greatly improved the situation of the Sunils. As he spoke, Herluz opened his communicator, brought up the 3D map projection of planet Sunil, and explained in detail. The threat of the Sunils came from the beasts on the planet, and the cause of the catastrophe was the prophecy stone mines buried all over the planet. A quantitative change led to a qualitative change, and the mines formed a psychic current that stimulated the beasts on the mental level. Therefore, the first goal of the Sunils was to clear the prophecy stone mines on the planet. However, because of the dangers in the wild, exploration was very difficult. The Sunils only controlled a very small area and could not bear the cost of expanding their territory. This would sacrifice many young warriors. The Black Star Corps played a role in this. With the help of spaceships and vehicles, the 200,000 players who were not afraid of sacrifice discovered thousands of shallow prophecy stone mines in the past few months. The closer one was to the Urvain, the more obvious the psychic undercurrent would be. There are almost no wild beasts nearby, so the players could easily mine the ore vein and destroy all of the prophecy stones. According to the calculations of the Sunil Research Department, the strength of the psychic current on the planet had decreased significantly, and the interval between the catastrophes was very likely to be extended to more than 10 years. This meant that Sunil's situation was no longer urgent, and they had more time to recuperate. This result was announced to the entire race. The entire race erupted with unprecedented vitality, seeing hope. The situation of the race had obviously improved, and all the Sunil warriors were very excited. Among them, Haluz was the most excited. The race was his hometown, and the Black Star Corps was Sunil's benefactor. He was the one who connected the two parties. On one hand, he was excited about his decision back then, and, on the other hand, he was grateful for Black Star's help. Of course, this result was far from enough. Since they wanted to solve the problem, the Sunils naturally wanted to be more thorough. After hearing this, Han Xiao asked, "What difficulties did you encounter in clearing the mineral veins?" As soon as this question was asked, everyone's expression darkened. Haluz said with a deep voice, "We made all sorts of guesses at the start, but we did not expect the resistance to be so severe." Han Xiao was immediately curious. Judging from his tone, it seemed like even 200,000 players could not solve this problem. "By the way, where did the mercenaries go? Why don't I see them?" Han Xiao looked around and did not see a single mercenary. Most of them are still exploring and fighting outside. In the wild, we built many camps to allow the mercenaries to get supplies outside and not have to return to Forest City. Now, only a small portion of the mercenaries are resting in Forest City, Haluz explained. "So that's the case. This is normal." Han Xiao nodded. It seemed like he had to find a reason to call the players back so that it would be easier for him to harvest EXP. Putting this thought aside for now, Han Xiao stroked his chin and asked, "Then, what difficulties did you encounter?" "It's like this. Shallow mineral veins are easy to clear, but there's also a huge amount of mineral veins underground. The amount might be a few times more than shallow mineral veins, and it's more difficult to mine them. We need bigger tools and more manpower, but this is not the main problem." Haluz sighed and projected an image. On it were a few types of beasts with strange shapes, but they had some characteristics of insects. "This is..." Han Xiao frowned. "As we dug deeper, we came to a completely different rock layer. We found traces of some strange monsters. Preliminary confirmation is that they are ancient underground beasts that have never come to the surface before. There's a huge population living underground on planet Sunil. Just a few nests that we found so far already have more than 100 million monsters. In the underground world that we have yet to explore, we don't know how many more there are." Haluz's tone was heavy. "Maybe they're the real owners of this planet." Han Xiao understood. The original mother planet of the Sunils had been destroyed, and they had migrated to this planet Sunil. It was not an exaggeration to say that they were guests who had taken over the nest. Due to the limited resources of their race, the Sunils did not explore deep underground. It was only today that they discovered that there was still a huge population living underground. These monsters were the natives of this planet. If not for the Black Star Corps, the Sunils would not have discovered that the planet they lived on still had a huge hidden danger. For some reason, these monsters built nests around the underground prophecy stone mines to indirectly protect the mines. They are very xenophobic, and their bodies are hard and agile. They also secrete corrosive mucus on the surface of their bodies. Their bodies are about the size of wild wolves. Dozens of underground exploration teams have already been wiped out. The underground is the home of the monsters. We can't use our full strength, so it's very difficult for us to fight. Protect the prophecy stone mines? Han Xiao pondered. Most of the underground creatures were close to minerals with radiation and even ate them. However, the prophecy stone mines did not have radiation. Instead, they stimulated wild beasts to go crazy. Logically speaking, wild beasts would try their best to stay away from the prophecy stone mines. But these underground monsters actually built nests around the prophecy stone mines. At that moment, a word popped up in Han Zhao's mind. Mutation. Their race might have existed for thousands of years. Living creatures will change as they adapt to the environment. Over a long period of time, their genes will mutate. Think about it. The catastrophe will stimulate wild beasts all over the world to go crazy, but you have never encountered such monsters. This means that they have never gone crazy and left the underground. This means that they're used to the psychic current and are immune to this stimulation. They have extremely strong psychic resistance, Han Xiao pondered. The Sunils were guests who had moved to this planet later on, and the prophecy stone had existed for countless years. During these countless years, they had no idea how much of an impact the prophecy stone had on the beasts of this planet. Haluz nodded. That's right. We call these underground monsters subterranean mutants. So, you summoning me means... Han Xiao had a guess. Your Excellency Blackstar, we would like to ask for your help. We need to kill all the subterranean mutants and take complete control of Planet Sunil. Only by killing these monsters will we be able to solve our current predicament. Furthermore, there are countless resources hidden underground. Only by eliminating the subterranean mutants will we be able to mine in peace. In order to completely eradicate the catastrophe, the only way was to destroy the underground mines. Then, the subterranean mutants all over the planet would be the biggest obstacle. Furthermore, they would have to mine the underground resources in the future, so the subterranean mutants would undoubtedly be a hindrance to their development. In terms of population, the subterranean mutants were probably hundreds or thousands of times more than the Sunils. The Sunils did not want to coexist with such a large number of species. As expected, thinking about the natural beauty that he had seen when he landed, Han Xiao could not help but sigh. He looked at Haluz and asked, "What do you think?" "That's what I think too." Haluz had a firm expression. "All right. I hope you understand that the nature of this matter has changed," Han Xiao said slowly. "This is a war employment. I will gather more spaceships and mercenaries." "Great!" Everyone was overjoyed. "To ensure the transportation of people and resources, I need to immediately build a sub-base on Planet Sunil. Do you have any objections?" "No." Everyone shook their heads. After establishing a consensus, Han Xiao walked to the side and called Philip. "Help me contact the Norio's Financial Group and Araso's Financial Group. I will be building a third sub-base on Planet Sunil in the Garden Star system. Help me list out the resources and send it to these two financial groups. Use their channels. Summon all 200,000 mercenaries on Planet Sunil and have them gather in Forest City. I need them to build a base. Also, send out an army recruitment. The recruitment destination is Planet Sunil. The target is all Black Star mercenaries." After receiving a series of orders, Philip responded. "Order confirmed. Han Xiao did not stop there. Through the faction interface, he directly issued a new mission to all the players. Army expansion, third base. At the same time, in a camp in the wilderness of Planet Sunil, the Sunil soldiers patrolled the perimeter. In the camp, many players had set up stalls, and some players were recruiting players to form teams. Many players were stationed in every camp. Near the camps were mission points and exploration points. The players stayed in the camps to replenish their supplies, forming an ecosystem unique to the players. Maple Moon sat in a corner with a repair symbol above her head. She had set up a stall to repair equipment, and her business was endless. Back then, she had chosen to follow the crowd and come to Planet Sunil. As a casual player, she did not like fighting and killing. She had always felt that mechanic was the most suitable class for her. In version 1.0, she had followed Black Star for a long time and accumulated many benefits. Her abilities were more outstanding than other mechanics, and her ability to repair and create equipment was clearly better than many players of the same class. She was one of the best, although she did not receive special treatment from Black Star in version 2.0. With her leading advantage, Maple Moon's business had always been very good. Other players were more willing to repair and buy equipment from her, allowing her to earn a lot of money. She had more resources to improve her own strength, forming a virtuous cycle. However, Maple Moon rarely fought. Compared to PK, she enjoyed storylines more. The The Sunil's employment was very much to her liking. Saving this race in danger and receiving the gratitude of the Sunils made her very happy. There were many players like Maple Moon who were interested in storylines, and to these players, benefits were secondary. They wanted a good story more than anything else. The management strategy that Han Shao had set for the Black Star Army was to let the players experience different storylines through employment. The Sunil players were an example, and their stories would become the deeds of the army. At this time, Maple Moon realized that the players on the street had all stopped at the same time and opened their interfaces. Seeing this, she knew that something big had happened and hurriedly checked her interface. The mission to build Base 3 that Han Shao had released immediately jumped into her eyes. Black Star has come to Sunil too? Strange, the mission of the Sunil rescue operation hasn't been completed yet, but he can already build Base 3? Who cares? It's a good thing that we can build a new base. The players discussed and left in groups, heading toward Forest City. The camp suddenly became empty. Most of the players had already put themselves in the shoes of the Black Star Corps. The expansion of the faction was due to the players, and they felt that their performance in Sunil had allowed the faction to grow. They immediately felt proud. Every time the faction expanded, the players would feel a sense of fulfillment. Han Zhao's method of creating a sense of belonging was very effective. Chapter 606. The location of base number 3 was not far from Forest City. After the 200,000 players in the wild received the construction mission, they all returned. With spaceships to pick them up, they were quickly assembled. Outside Forest City, the 200,000 players were densely packed and noisy. Their eyes were all focused on Han Shao. Han Shao borrowed the Dragon Emperor's cool outfit again, sitting on a mechanical throne and floating in the air. It was not that he wanted to look cool, but with so many players, they would not be able to see him unless they were in the sky. Han Shao had not come into close contact with the players for a while, so he roughly observed them. The 200,000 players who had stayed on planet Sunil for a few months had obviously changed their outfits. They could be roughly divided into 3 types of people. The first type wore heavy armor, mostly Sunil soldier armor, and some war worker bee armor. It was worth mentioning that the Sunil series armor of these players were all products of the army. The Sunil people obviously knew that Han Shao had stolen their blueprints, but even if they knew, it would be useless. The second type of players did not wear armor. They only made up about 1/10 of the total. Han Technician did not know if they were poor or not. Even if they were pugilists or espers, there was no harm in buying a set of armor. Even the Vanguard officials of Bloodshed Land had to wear special armor. However, although this type of players did not have armor, they still had some mechanical equipment on them, such as firearms, melee mechanical weapons, shield generators, and so on. The third type of players also did not wear armor. They wore nuclear-powered flying backpacks. One look, and one could tell that they were in the art world. All in all the players were using the products of the Black Star Corps. Their equipment had already been updated and looked brand new. Now, these players look a little like Black Star troopers. However, in Han Zhao's eyes, it was more like a field of green leeks. Planet Sunil was a resource land for NPCs. After letting the 200,000 players grow here for a few months, they had accumulated a lot of resources. Every leek was growing well and was full of nutrients. Seeing that everyone was looking at him, Han Shao coughed, put on a serious expression, and said with a deep voice, "Due to the results of your work, the Sunil people's predicament has been alleviated. However, new obstacles have appeared in this mission, and we need more help. Therefore, the original plan has been brought forward. We will build the 3rd base on this planet as a stronghold. Philip has already sent the specific location to everyone's communicators. The construction of a new base will require everyone's help." Han Shao roughly explained the situation, and the players did not have any objections. They followed him to the designated location of the base and started clearing the trees and leveling the terrain. Army expansion. 3rd base was a faction series mission, and it included a lot of construction work that required the players to complete. Every submission rewarded EXP and faction contribution points. The players were very enthusiastic not only because of the rewards, but also because they could participate in the construction of a new base and contribute to the growth of the faction. The construction of the third base was also for their own benefit. A new stronghold meant that the army would store a lot of resources in the third base. At that time, the players would not need to pre-order faction products, but could pick them up directly from the third base. Furthermore, because the missions could only be accepted after returning to the base, other than the Golden Gate base and the Blue Star base, there was another place for the players to accept missions or stay. This was the new stronghold of the Black Star Corps in the vast universe. Han Shao notified the Galactic Construction Team that he had been working with for a long time. They would arrive at Planet Senil in a few days. However, the construction team was only building the buildings. The specific facilities still needed to be completed by his own people. Gathering 200,000 players could greatly increase the construction speed of the third base. Furthermore, the Norio's Financial Group and the Rosso's Financial Group had both provided some help and obtained a large amount of resources through their channels. Han Shao did a rough calculation. The two financial backers had saved him about 600,000 anas. This time, he was prepared to invest 2,700,000 anas to build the third base. The total assets in his account were close to 50 million anas, so he could easily afford this expenditure. Thinking back to a year and a half ago, he had only borrowed 3 to 4 million anas, and it took him more than half a year to build the first base. In less than 2 years, his assets had multiplied by more than 10 times. The speed of development was very impressive. The players were very efficient. Not long after, a large piece of flat land appeared in the forest. As the construction materials had not been shipped over yet, the players were temporarily unable to start work after the land was flattened. The dozens of battleships that were on standby on Planet Senil were all moved over, forming a temporary camp. The players gathered there, and so did Han Shao. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the players all found Han Shao, wanting to learn skills. Most of them were mechanics. After not seeing Black Star for a few months, they were finally able to get some rain after a long drought. This was exactly what Han Shao wanted. He had planned long ago not to sell knowledge, but blueprints this time. He had a talent from his scholar subclass, research theory. The effect of this talent was to increase intelligence by 1 point for every 3 skills. Currently, it provided about 300 points of intelligence. This meant that Han Shao now had close to 1,000 blueprints and skills, which cost him a lot of EXP. To the players, this was an astronomical figure. Selling a portion of the low-grade blueprints did not affect him much. Han Shao released dozens of low-grade machinery blueprints in one go. The players were basically all above level 70. At this level, low-grade blueprints were no longer rare, and the players could fuse them on their own. However, due to the variety of knowledge combinations, every mechanic player was unable to fuse the blueprints they needed, and the blueprints they knew were all different. However, he directly sold all kinds of blueprints, indirectly helping the players escape the bottomless pit of blueprints gambling. Looking at the dazzling array of blueprints, the eyes of the mechanic players lit up. After working on Planet Senil for a few months, these players did not lack EXP. Although the blueprints Han Shao gave them were not very technical, they covered all kinds of aspects: firearms, explosives, mechanical troops, shields, mechanical suits, energy sources, vehicles, and so on. Blueprints gambling was very dependent on luck, and there was only one mechanic player who was equally well-rounded. Therefore, every player could find blueprints that were useful to them and make up for their shortcomings. Han Shao was not worried that the mechanic players would affect the sales of the Black Star Corps after learning the blueprints. In terms of cost, the players would definitely not be able to compete with the mass production line, and they would not be able to achieve the characteristics of the Army's products at a low price. Furthermore, they could accumulate contribution points by spending money in the Army. Furthermore, Han Shao did not sell blueprints for faction products. What he sold were similar machines that were half a grade lower. In fact, Han Zhao's development plan also included joining the material industry and selling raw materials to the players to earn another sum of money. While expanding the business of the Black Star Corps, it would also make things convenient for the players, allowing them to purchase the materials they needed directly from the faction store. Among the 200,000 players, there were 50,000 to 60,000 mechanic players. They excitedly learned the blueprints, and most of them learned more than one type. Han Zhao's EXP storage quickly filled up, quickly breaking through the 1 billion mark, and it was still increasing rapidly. At this time, the players also realized that other than the low-level blueprints, there was also a high-level blueprint that made their hearts pound. Void Dragon Mechanical Suit. This is a god-grade blueprint. What the F***CK, this is amazing. The mechanic players were overjoyed. They looked at the price, which required 60 EXP and 2,000 anus. Many of them showed a pained expression, but the Void Dragon Mechanical Suit's OP parameters were like a sexy girl in revealing clothes, constantly telling the players to come face to face with it. In the eyes of the players, the attributes of the Void Dragon Mechanical Suit were undoubtedly god-grade equipment. A portion of the players who could afford it hesitated for a while before gritting their teeth and learning it. Seeing this, Han Xiao had a subtle smile on his face. Although this blueprint was high level, he already had the Berserk Ape, so he did not need the Void Dragon Mechanical Suit anymore. It was just right to sell it to the players. The difficulty of creating the Void Dragon Mechanical Suit was extremely high, and the players could only barely succeed when they were above level 90. Furthermore, the core material was the Void Dragon Bone, which was what Han Xiao valued the most. Even if the players really managed to create it, it could not be replicated. What? You want to mass-produce it? Sure, I'll just have to ask Ames for a floating dragon mechanical suit. I should be able to experience a way to die. Within 1 or 2 versions, the chances of the players being able to create it were extremely slim. If they bought it back, they would only be able to look at it. That was impossible. From the perspective of the players, the most suitable mechanical suit blueprint for their current situation was actually the Amphiptera that Han Xiao had eliminated long ago. With the current ability of the mechanic class players, it was possible to create the Amphiptera, and the cost was also within control. Once the Amphiptera blueprint was sold, this single mechanical suit would quickly become popular among the players, and the average strength of the players would greatly increase. However, it was precisely because of this that Han Xiao did not want to sell the Amphiptera. If the players were able to obtain it in one go, how would they be able to use the Sunil series armor to harvest leaks? Therefore, Han Technician chose to teach the Void Dragon Mechanical Suit blueprint, painting a big pie for the players. A person without dreams was no different from a salted fish, and dreams could be used to obtain a wave of benefits. However, he did not want to scam the players too badly. At least, the selling price of the Void Dragon Mechanical Suit blueprint was far lower than its actual value. Logically speaking, a mechanical suit blueprint of this level could be sold for hundreds of thousands of anas in the galaxy. After this round of harvest, Han Zhao's experience skyrocketed again, easily exceeding 3 billion. He could not help but smile. Maple Moon also learned the Void Dragon Mechanical Suit blueprint, quickly browsing through the materials and muttering, Void Dragon Bone. This looks familiar. Isn't this a specialty of Floating Dragon? As a player who had followed Han Xiao since version 1.0, Maple Moon had personally been to Floating Dragon Island. She was the first mechanic player present who had a clue. This lasted for half a day, and when night fell, the mechanic class players finally dispersed and returned with a full harvest. Han Zhao's experience reserve had reached 9 billion. The price of low-level blueprints was around 40,000, and there were around 50,000 to 60,000 mechanic class players. Each time, they would not only buy one blueprint, but there were also a few thousand who bought the Void Dragon mechanical suit. In total, Han Xiao obtained about 9 billion experience. This is quite a haul. Han Xiao was quite satisfied. He had exchanged some blueprints that he did not need for a large amount of experience. It was quite worth it. With enough experience, Han Xiao did not waste any time. He returned to the spaceship's training room, opened the interface, and invested 3 billion experience, leveling up 3 times. Virtual Mechanic has been leveled up to LV20 Max, plus 350 energy, plus 3 DX, plus 3 END, plus 6 INT. You have received 6 free attribute points. You have received 1 potential point. Main class level has reached the upper limit. You may continue to level up after completing the class advancement requirements. Class advancement requirements. Intelligence greater than 1,300, machinery affinity greater than 0%, active skill bonus not included. I got the random attribute requirement. Han Zhao's eyes sparkled. Normal players had a lot of different attribute points, and it was often difficult for them to meet the class advancement requirements. They would be forced to learn a secondary class. However, to Han Zhao, this class advancement requirement was the easiest. The class advancement requirements for the main class were mostly related to the characteristics of the class itself. For core attributes like intelligence and machinery affinity, Han Zhao had always exceeded the normal standards of his current level. As for intelligence, he threw in all the free attribute points he had just obtained. Its basic value had reached 1,536 points, which had already exceeded the class advancement requirements. Together with the plus 10% bonus from the Calamity grade and more than 300 points from Research Theory, his actual intelligence value was close to 2,000 points. His basic machinery affinity, together with talents and passive skills, was 686%, which also exceeded the class advancement requirements. This meant that Han Zhao did not need to learn a new secondary class. His own attributes had already met the class advancement requirements. Wow, my luck has changed recently. Han Zhao rubbed his hands excitedly. Could it be that the effect of touching Fu Ding was permanent? Since he met the requirements, Han Zhao did not hesitate and directly invested in his experience. He leveled up once more and completed the class advancement. He felt a sharp pain in his brain, and he gained many new insights. Prerequisites for class change completed. You have received a new class, Galaxy Mechanic LV1. Plus 180 energy, plus 1 STR, plus 3 DX, plus 3 Yendi, plus 8 INT. You have received 6 free attribute points and 1 potential point. You have learned the ability Master Machinery Affinity. You have learned the ability Ultra Fast Virtual Intrusion. You have learned the ability Quantum Network Matrix. You have received the talent Machinery Theory Summary. The effect of your talent, Virtual Technology Mastery, has been strengthened. The effect of your talent, Artificial Defense Enhancement, has been strengthened. Chapter 607. Galaxy Mechanic was the advanced stage of the mechanic class. At this level, one could already be called a master. The level limit of this stage was increased by 5, and the maximum level was LV25. According to Han Zhao's memories, most mechanic players in his previous life had entered grade A at the Galaxy Mechanic stage. The new class was called Galaxy Mechanic. The machines it built were even more powerful, and the range of applications gradually transitioned from small situations to galactic wars. The specific enhancement was the ability to build even more powerful mechanical weapons. For example, Carol was a Galaxy Mechanic, and the Ship Destroyer Giant Soldier was the blueprint he came up with during his Galaxy Mechanic stage. In the end, it was given to Han Zhao. From the perspective of the players, this enhancement was reflected in the fusion of blueprints. Class advancement to Galaxy Mechanic was the prerequisite for higher-level blueprints, and the previous knowledge combinations would unlock more blueprints. In terms of skills, Galaxy Mechanic would strengthen the specialization he chose in the previous stage, greatly enhancing Han Zhao's virtual technology skills. The related skills and talents were strengthened, and he also obtained 2 new virtual technology skills. Ultra Fast Virtual Intrusion, as the name suggested, greatly increased the speed of the intrusion, but the price was that the duration of the authorization was shortened. Quantum Network Matrix was a core skill with 2 effects. The first was that the range of the intrusion would be greatly increased. Range was an important attribute of virtual technology. Face-to-face intrusion and intrusion across an entire star system were 2 completely different realms. The quantum network was everywhere, and the level of virtual technology determined the extent to which a mechanic could use the quantum network. Han Zhao's range had greatly increased, but it was still very far away from the terrifying range of a star system. Only a beyond grade a mechanic like Mecha Empire. Manison had such a terrifying range that could cross star systems and even star clusters. The second effect of this skill was the virtual intrusion version of sputtering. For example, if the targets of the intrusion were two independent artificial intelligences, but the two of them were exchanging data and information in real time, then if one of the artificial intelligences was invaded through the information exchange between the two of them, there would be an indirect intrusion effect. It was similar to how computers spread viruses, equivalent to AE-type virtual intrusion attacks, but the detection of an indirect intrusion would be much more difficult. As for Master Machinery Affinity, it was needless to say. When it was maxed out, it would give him a 75% increase in Machinery Affinity effect. It was a practical skill. The last one, Machinery Theory Summary, was a talent. Like Machinery Analytical Comprehension, it was one of the core abilities of the mechanic class. Its effect was to convert intelligence into machinery affinity. The conversion ratio was 30 intelligence equals 2% machinery affinity. As the main class continued to level up, the increase in strength from the core attributes of the class became more and more obvious. That was why Han Xiao had put all his points into intelligence. Level 146, Han Xiao thought about it and decided not to continue leveling up. He maxed out his new skills and saved the remaining billions of experience points. Class advancement was a watershed, which was why there was an obvious increase in combat power. However, the benefits of leveling up after that would not be high. If he wanted to reach level 160, he would need a huge amount of experience, and the little stock he had on hand was far from enough. He might as well keep it to level up his skills and get more potential points. What he lacked the most now was potential points, and he only had a single digit left. With energy flowing through his body like a torrent, Han Xiao could feel the obvious changes in his body. His senses were clearer, and he gently touched the compressed orb. The structure of machinery subconsciously appeared in his mind, and his understanding of machinery became deeper. After feeling it for a while, Han Xiaoxin left the training room with satisfaction. Only then did he see a message from Herluz inviting him to join the pre-battle meeting to discuss how to deal with the subterranean mutants. Han Xiao could not help but shake his head. Chapter 608. Galaxy Mechanic was the advanced stage of the mechanic class. At this level, one could be called a master. The level limit of this stage was increased by 5 levels, and the maximum level was 25. According to Han Zhao's memories, in his previous life, most of the mechanic class players had entered grade A at the Galaxy Mechanic stage. The new class was called Galaxy Mechanic, and the machines it built were much stronger. Its range of application gradually transitioned from small situations to galactic wars, and it was much more sophisticated. The specific enhancement was the ability to build stronger mechanical weapons. For example, Carol was a Galaxy Mechanic, and the Ship Destroyer Giant Soldier was the blueprint he came up with during his Galaxy Mechanic stage. In the end, it was given to Han Xiao. From the perspective of the players, this enhancement was reflected in the blueprint fusion. The class advancement to Galaxy Mechanic was the prerequisite for the blueprints of higher stages, and the previous knowledge combinations would unlock more blueprints. In terms of abilities, Galaxy Mechanic would strengthen the specialization chosen in the previous stage, which greatly enhanced Han Zhao's virtual technology. At the same time, he also obtained 2 new virtual technology abilities. Ultra-fast virtual intrusion, as the name suggested, greatly increased the speed of the intrusion, but the price was that the duration of the authorization was shortened. Quantum Network Matrix was a core ability with 2 effects. The first was that the range of the intrusion would be greatly increased. Range was an important attribute of virtual technology. Face-to-face invasion and invasion across an entire star system were clearly 2 completely different realms. The quantum network was everywhere, and the level of virtual technology determined the extent to which a mechanic could use the quantum network. Han Zhao's range had greatly increased, but it was still a long way from the terrifying range of a star system. Only a beyond grade a mechanic like Mecha Empire. Manison had such a terrifying range, which could cross star system and even star cluster invasions. The second effect of this ability was the virtual intrusion version of sputtering. For example, if the targets of the intrusion were two independent artificial intelligences, but the two were exchanging data and information in real time, then if one of the artificial intelligences was invaded through the information exchange between the two, the effect of indirect intrusion would be produced. It was similar to the mechanism of a computer virus, equivalent to an AoE type of virtual intrusion attack, but the detection of indirect intrusion would be much more difficult. As for Master Machinery Affinity, it was needless to say, when it was maxed out, it would give him a 75% increase in Machinery Affinity effect. It was a practical skill. The last one, Machinery Theory Summary, was a talent. Like Machinery Analytical Comprehension, it was one of the core abilities of the mechanic class. Its effect was to convert intelligence into machinery affinity. The conversion ratio was 0 intelligence equals 2% machinery affinity. As the main class continued to level up, the increase in strength from the core attributes of the class became more and more obvious. That was why Han Xiao had put all his points into intelligence. Level 146, Han Xiao thought about it and decided not to continue leveling up. He maxed out his new skills and saved the remaining billions of experience points. Class advancement was a watershed, which was why there was an obvious increase in combat power. However, the benefits of leveling up after that would not be high. If he wanted to reach level 160, he would need a huge amount of experience, and the little stock he had on hand was far from enough. He might as well keep it to level up his skills and get more potential points. What he lacked the most now was potential points, and he only had a single digit left. With energy flowing through his body like a torrent, Han Xiao could feel the obvious changes in his body. His senses were clearer. He gently touched the compressed orb, and the structure of machinery subconsciously appeared in his mind. He had a deeper understanding of machinery. After feeling it for a while, Han Xiaoxin left the training room with satisfaction. Only then did he see the message from Herluz, inviting him to join the pre-battle meeting to discuss how to deal with the subterranean mutants. Chapter 609. Han Xiao looked into Herluz's eyes and saw nervousness and hesitation. He seemed to care a lot about Herluz's answer. Han Xiao suddenly felt a little emotional. Ever since he became a Calamity grade, his prestige in the eyes of the Grade B officers had been increasing day by day. He had interacted with Herluz for a few years and understood Herluz's personality quite well. Herluz had been decadent for many years before he started to serve his race. Compared to those Sunil warriors who had suffered so much, he was not as decisive and had more thoughts. In Han Zhao's previous life, Herluz had been able to die fighting against the Calamity. His experience now was different from his previous life, so his mentality had naturally changed. You're thinking too much. There are not so many moral constraints in the battle for survival. It's all about the difference in standpoints. If I don't help, the Sunils will be finished. Didn't you hire me to avoid this? Han Xiao patted Herluz's shoulder and said, Indeed, the Sunils are outsiders, and the subterranean mutants are innocent. They did not do anything wrong, but the law of the jungle is an eternal rule. The subterranean mutants are hindering the survival of the Sunils. Since you have no other choice, don't sympathize with your enemy. I know, but what difference is there between us and Darkstar? Herluz wanted to say something, but stopped. Sunil's mother planet had been invaded and destroyed by Darkstar. They were also victims, but now they had become invaders like Darkstar. This change in role made Herluz's feelings indescribable. Sunil is not Darkstar. Darkstar destroys for the sake of destruction, but you are doing it to continue your race. Your motives are different. This is a battle for survival between races. Since you Sunil can't move, your only goal is to destroy your natural enemies. There's only a difference between the strong and the weak, not right or wrong. Don't feel too guilty, Han Xiao paused and added, If the subterranean mutants paid me to chase away the Senils, I might have stood on their side. You don't want me to chase away your race, right? As a chaotic neutral and a very professional mercenary, this kind of problem was not a problem at all. He had no intention of criticizing Sunil's actions. In every corner of the universe, the drama of fighting for survival resources was played out every day. Every second, a large number of species were born or died. Those who were not of the same race were bound to have different intentions. Survival was the first need. Haluz smiled helplessly. Han Zhao's attitude made him feel relieved. It was good that Black Star did not hate him because of this. Stop chatting, let's get started. Serene was impatient. His tone was cold as he jumped into the hole. Seeing this, Haluz sighed and jumped down as well. Han Zhao activated the Berserk Ape Mech and followed closely behind. The three of them flew down for a while, and the hole gradually disappeared. Their field of vision was pitch black, and there was no light source. Han Zhao turned on his night vision goggles. When they were a few thousand meters below the surface, the three of them finally reached the end of the hole and stepped on a flat ground. In front of them was a pitch-black underground space. The tunnels were complicated and twisted like a beast's path. There were a few prophecy stone mines nearby, and there were a few subterranean mutant nests. The Sunils had only officially discovered the existence of the subterranean mutants when they dug here. They had lost some exploration teams, so they stopped digging. Only around the hole were traces of man-made excavation. Further away was the world of the subterranean mutants. It was huge, and just the area that they had discovered was far larger than Forest City. God knew how many years it had taken the subterranean mutants to create such a majestic underground world. The temperature at this depth was very high, and it was rich in geothermal energy. Han Zhao turned on his life detection radar, and a nest in the distance was filled with dense light spots. The light spots represented the subterranean mutants, and their numbers were terrifying. Just one nest alone had tens of millions of subterranean mutants. Sunil had given these nests a number, and they were going to the closest nest, nest number 1. This was just the tip of the iceberg of the underground world. Planet Sunil was huge, and there were countless nests that had not been discovered. The number of subterranean mutants was in the hundreds of millions, and they were the undisputed masters of this planet. The nests spread out, with the prophecy stone mine as the center. The light spots around the mine were the densest, just like the city center. After following the guidance of the radar for a while, the three of them approached the periphery of the nest. The corrosive mucus of the subterranean mutants gradually appeared on the ground and walls, and it had long become a thick colloidal carpet. It was very thick and tough to the touch. Beep, beep this time. The radar suddenly alerted them that there were more than 10 mutants passing by. Han Zhao turned on his long-range vision and locked onto these mutants. Han Zhao accelerated and approached the mutants instantly. His movements created a series of afterimages, and in the blink of an eye, the dozen mutants were all beaten to the ground. In front of the absolute strength of a calamity grade, there was no suspense in the battle. Haluz and Serene followed and controlled these mutants. Their mission was to be the coolies. The subterranean mutants were more than a meter long and had some of the characteristics of the Zerg race. Their carapace protected their muscles, and there were fine hairs between the gaps, oozing mucus. Their heads were very small, and they did not have eyes at all. They only had 4 flexible tentacles, and their mouths were full of sharp teeth. They ate rocks as food, and they had 4 muscular legs that could run and jump. They were vertebrates, and they had a hard carapace tail with a shovel-shaped bone at the end. We've caught the samples. Shall we go back? Haluz whispered. You guys go first. I'll go take a look deeper into the nest. Han Zhao waved his hands. The two of them naturally did not have any objections. They did not need to worry about Han Zhao's combatability, and they obediently took the subterranean mutants back the way they came. Han Zhao was the only one left. He looked at the battle information just now, and the attributes of the subterranean mutants appeared before his eyes. Their average level was between 30 to 40, and they were beast-type creatures. All of them had psionic resistance talents. Other than that, there were no other highlights. Their psionic resistance is indeed very high. They won't be affected by the prophecy stone. Han Xiao nodded. Next, he needed to find out why the subterranean mutants lived near the prophecy stone. After activating the stealth function, Han Xiao moved quickly into the depths of the nest and started to encounter subterranean mutants frequently. However, the berserk ape stealth was naturally not something the subterranean mutants could discover, so his journey was smooth. The closer he got to the center of the nest, the larger the subterranean mutants' bodies became. They gradually grew from 1 meter long to 3 or 4 meters long, and their carapaces became thicker. Han Xiao suddenly noticed that there were crooked scratches on one of the walls, forming a picture of unknown meaning. He looked at it carefully and confirmed that it was a mural carved by the subterranean mutants with their tails. Is this a form of recording? The subterranean mutants' language? Han Xiaoxin's mind moved. The appearance of a recording method often meant that civilization was beginning to sprout. Are the subterranean mutants transitioning from wild beasts to intelligent species? This thought flashed through his mind, and Han Xiao continued forward. Soon, he arrived near the prophecy stone mine. He discovered that there were no signs of mining at all. It was as if the subterranean mutants had never used the prophecy stone and were only guarding the mine. Are the subterranean mutants only fond of the prophecy stone's psionic radiation? Han Xiao was a little curious. He suddenly had the idea of destroying the mine to test the subterranean mutants' reaction. Han Xiao deactivated his stealth and released the Watcher instrument, bombarding this small mine. Boom! Explosions rang out continuously, and the tunnel started to shake rapidly. The next moment, the radar showed that all the subterranean mutants in the nest seemed to have gone crazy and were crazily converging toward this location. The surging tide of subterranean mutants rushed over, sealing off all the space. Han Xiao was not in a hurry. He set the Watcher instrument to an explosive attack, firing freely. Beams of light shot out, exploding in the midst of the subterranean mutants. The powerful force easily tore apart the subterranean mutants. The subterranean mutants were endless, wave after wave, but none of them could reach Han Xiao. They were all smashed into minced meat, piling up higher and higher. Han Xiao strolled around casually. The huge difference in strength made the number of subterranean mutants meaningless. Although there was no danger, this phenomenon made Han Xiao realize a problem. Why is it that when I destroy the prophecy stone mine, the entire nest will go berserk and charge toward me? This phenomenon is a bit like hitting a life form's vital point. Han Xiao's eyes flickered as he guessed. Going berserk means that the nest has a collective consciousness. Perhaps the subterranean mutants' method of communication is mental waves, and the entire nest has formed a collective mental network. The prophecy stones happen to have mental radiation, which has affected the subterranean mutants for many years, causing their mental strength to evolve. Perhaps the subterranean mutants are using the prophecy stones to maintain their mental network? Therefore, the subterranean mutants are using the prophecy stone mine as a tool, a communication base. This can explain why the subterranean mutants would build a nest near the prophecy stone mine. Perhaps tribes are more appropriate. An underground mine can only allow one subterranean mutant tribe to exist. Every tribe is a closed ecosystem, and the prophecy stone mine is the external organ of the subterranean mutants. This type of racial characteristic, why is it so similar to the World Tree civilization? Suddenly, Han Xiao felt slightly dizzy, and notifications popped up on his interface. You have received a mental attack. The level difference is too large. You are immune to this attack. Assessing the negative effect. Assessment passed. You are immune to the confusion status. They even have mental attacks. Han Xiao was shocked. He immediately checked the combat information and realized that ordinary subterranean mutants did not have such an ability, but those 3 to 4 meter tall elite mutants all had the mental confusion skill. The level difference was too large, and Han Xiao also had advanced mental resilience resistance. Most of the mental attacks of the elite mutants were ineffective, but there were a few attacks that passed the assessment and confused his mind. Han Xiao became alert. Mental attacks countered his health and mana exchange. He did not stay any longer, and the berserk ape instantly activated. He turned into a black streak of light and smashed a bloody path through the beast's tide, leaving behind a trail of blood. He followed the path back to the entrance of the cave. The calamity grade's lethality was shocking, and he killed thousands of subterranean mutants in a short period of time. As long as Han Xiao had enough time, it would not be difficult for him to wipe out all the subterranean mutants by himself. Unfortunately, the level difference was too large, and he only received 1 point of experience. Even if he killed 10 million subterranean mutants alone, he would only receive 1,000 experience. However, to the players, killing was a way to level up quickly. In his previous life, there were players who did this and ended up with countless bounties. They could use up all their revival times every day. They were even more suicidal than the Han technician. After collecting a lot of information, Han Xiao ascended through the cave and flew back to the surface. He immediately saw Haluz and Han Xiao waiting for him at the edge of the cave. The dozen or so subterranean mutants that they had captured alive were already locked in cages. Blackstar, what did you find? Haluz smelled the thick scent of blood. There's a lot of interesting information. Let's talk about it when we get back. The three of them boarded the spaceship and returned to Forest City. The Sunil Research Department was already waiting for them, and they successfully handed over the captured subterranean mutants. Han Xiao told the Sunil Research Department about his findings, such as the signs of a budding civilization of the subterranean mutants, the effects of the Prophecy Stone Mine, and so on. This trip had easily completed a few small objectives of the Sunil main storyline mission, especially the Slaughterer mission. He had received a few million experience, and his mission rating had significantly increased. Next, he would wait for the Sunil Research Department to complete their research on the subterranean mutants and for the Galactic Engineering Team to arrive to build Base 3. After these 2 points were completed, he could officially clear out the subterranean mutants. At the same time, in Nest 1, right after Han Xiao left, the subterranean mutants collected all the corpses and piled them together. The scene was extremely bloody. If an ordinary person saw this scene, they would very likely vomit. Countless tentacles of the subterranean mutants waved crazily, as if they were communicating silently. After a while, all the subterranean mutants seemed to have come to a consensus. They all gathered in the mine area and lowered their bodies as if they were worshipping the mine like an ancient totem. Then, all the subterranean mutants suddenly started to use their shovel-shaped tails to dig out piles of raw prophecy stones. They piled them together and protected them tightly. A few hundred subterranean mutants wanted to eat the raw prophecy stones, but they were attacked by their companions and quickly killed. The subterranean mutants' digging speed was very fast, and they had a large number of them. Not long after, the huge mine was completely excavated, and all the prophecy stones were dug out. The 3 to 4 meter tall elite mutants moved the huge pieces of prophecy stones, forming a huge team that was protected by countless other elite mutants in the center. Then, this subterranean mutant tribe that numbered in the tens of millions abandoned their original nest and started to move far away. During this time, there were some porters that tried to eat the prophecy stones, but were also beaten to death. Their companions tore open their bodies, dug out the undigested prophecy stones from their stomachs, and continued to move. Chapter 610. A few days later, the Galactic Construction Team finally arrived at Sunil, and the temporary camp of the players finally completed its beautiful transformation. The blueprint of Base Number 3 was improved on the foundation of Base Number 1, and the construction team showed off their capabilities using advanced construction equipment to quickly build the foundation and houses. The players were put to good use, and they worked hard to contribute to the expansion and construction of the Black Star Corps. Together with the construction team, the construction efficiency of Base Number 3 was shockingly high. More members of the Black Star Corps responded to the call and gathered on planet Sunil. Aroshia, Reynold, Sylvia, Jeanette, Harmon, and the other officers all arrived, bringing thousands of mercenaries with them. The other hundreds of thousands of players who were working outside also arrived one after another. So far, the number of players on planet Sunil had increased to 280,000. Sunil had issued a Grade A mission, which made the players extremely excited. So far, all the Grade A missions that the players had seen were main storyline missions, and the upcoming war between Sunil and the Subterranean Mutants was also treated as a new main storyline by the players. Ever since entering the galaxy, the players had not experienced a major event that could be considered a new main storyline, and the Black Star Corps was the guiding faction, the backbone in the eyes of the players. Everyone thought that following the Black Star Corps was the key to starting the next phase of the storyline, and the current situation had proven their thoughts. Because of the Black Star Corps, there was a main storyline for Sunil. This was a storyline brought about by the faction, and the players could see the greater potential of the Black Star Corps. This meant that they could grow with the faction and trigger more main storylines. Due to the nature of the Black Star Corps' work, with Sunil, there would definitely be other main storylines, and the future would be bright. Realizing this, countless players were extremely excited, imagining the possibilities of the faction's future. They could not help but feel an itch in their hearts. Maybe the true advantage of being born in Blue Star was being able to join such a great faction like the Black Star Corps. Han Xiao had always been paying attention to the players' movements. Group activities helped to increase cohesion, and main storyline missions like Sunil's could make the players feel a sense of belonging. Han Xiao remembered that there were many large Grade A missions on planets, and this was part of his plan. As long as they completed the Sunil experiment, the players would be able to receive a main storyline every once in a while. In the meeting room, all the officers were gathered. This was the first time in a few months that all the officers had been recruited to participate in this mission. They had also brought along more than half of the Army spaceships and a huge amount of resources. Han Xiao sat at the head of the table and projected the information on the table to explain the situation. The Sunil's research on the physiological structure of the Subterranean Mutants has yielded results. The Subterranean Mutants have a certain level of intelligence, and the tentacles on their heads are important organs for sensing the outside world. They release weak psychic energy to detect the outside world and provide feedback for the brain. In other words, the tentacles are their eyes. Leonard interrupted and nodded slowly. Psychic sensing creatures? Such a race has great potential. Everyone glanced at him, but did not say anything. Han Xiao continued. There are two ways for the Subterranean Mutants to communicate. The first is when their tentacles touch, and two mutants can communicate mentally. The second is when the Subterranean Mutants are near a certain number of prophecy stones. They can perform a wide-area mental connection and communicate with all of their kind within range. The number of prophecy stones determines the range of the mental connection. Other than that, the Subterranean Mutants have a weakness. They seem to be very afraid of ultraviolet rays. Research shows that normal sunlight can burn them. This is both good news and bad news. It means that we can't lure the Subterranean Mutants to the surface. Therefore, we have two countermeasures. First, send mercenaries to fight underground and slowly eliminate the mutants. Second, we will try to create a large-scale biochemical weapon against the Subterranean Mutants. Yeching, I'll leave this mission to you. Han Xiao quickly explained the situation and started to assign tasks. He had a pharmacist under him, so he could not be bothered to spend more money to consult the various pharmaceutical research institutes. Humph, you only think of me when you have a problem. Don't look for me when you have nothing to do. Let me tell you, I like saving people now. Don't look for me for poison research. I want to be a good person. Yeching crossed her arms and turned her head to express her dissatisfaction. Han Xiao glanced at her and said, I've approved the research funding you applied for last time. Don't worry, I'll definitely create the poison for you. Emerald Grass instantly changed her words. She had no integrity at all. Han Xiao rolled his eyes and turned to Fu Ding. He put on a smile and said, Fu Ding, I want your help to detect the Subterranean Mutants' mental network. Help us understand their communication status and see if you can mislead them. As the Subterranean Mutants used mental communication, This was where psychics came in handy. So, this is why you call me over? Fu Ding shook his head helplessly. I refused to help. He was not a mercenary, but a client. He did not want to participate in this massacre. All right then. Han Xiao did not force him. After all, he still had the three Volga brothers. Just as he was about to look away, Han Xiao suddenly thought of something and asked, "By the way, how are you and Chen Xing now?" He was still thinking about Fu Ding's personal mission. "I talk to her every day. Our relationship is all right." Fu Ding scratched his face, feeling a little embarrassed. Seeing this, Han Xiao's mouth twitched. "What are you feeling embarrassed about? Is your relationship really just okay?" Han Xiao's scalp went numb. He felt that the result he had predicted was gradually coming true. This is too scary. Could it be that I'm going to see a true soulmate? After coughing, Han Xiao knocked on the table and returned to the original topic. So far, we've only found 7 nests, all built near the underground Prophecy Stone mine. Reynold, based on the Prophecy Stone psychic radiation, creates some equipment that can detect the Prophecy Stone mine in a large area. It's best if you can detect it from the surface and install it on the spaceship. Let our spaceship search the entire world and find all the nests of the subterranean mutants. Reynolds sat up straight and nodded. "I won't let you down." At this moment, Haluz scratched his head and suddenly interrupted. "I have a question." Han Xiao looked over. "What's wrong?" "Actually, I wanted to ask earlier." Haluz pointed at Reynolds. "Who is this person?" Reynolds had only joined for less than a month. Other than Sylvia, Orochia, and the others who stayed in base number 1, none of the officers present knew who he was. However, they could feel Reynolds' powerful aura. He was probably the strongest person present other than Black Star. Haluz asked the question that was on everyone's mind. "I'm Reynolds, a mechanic. Because I admire His Excellency Black Star, I specially joined the Black Star Corps to learn from him. His Excellency Black Star is now my teacher, and Sylvia is my senior sister. I'm the logistics manager of the Black Star Corps, and I'm very happy to work with all of you." Reynolds' tone was very formal. "Senior sister?" Everyone was shocked. They all stared at Sylvia, as if the word doubt was carved on their faces. Sylvia shivered, shrunk her neck, and said angrily, "I've said it hundreds of times. Do not call me that." With this little episode, everyone finally got to know Reynolds and accepted him as a colleague. After the discussion, Han Xiao stood up and said, "Let's get to work." 2 days later, the sun was shining brightly. In a military camp near the underground cave, a large number of players had gathered. There was also a Sunil armored army, fully armed and ready to go. Today was the official day of the operation. Because the subterranean mutants were afraid of ultraviolet rays, they had abandoned the plan of luring them out. Developing poison and exploring more nests required time, so the only thing they could do now was to go underground. Unlike the solemn and silent atmosphere of the Sunil troops, the players rubbed their palms together, eager to give it a try. So many people moving together. What a big scene. The bigger the scene, the more interesting it is. The main storyline mission had officially begun. Most of the players were there, and most of them were battle-hungry. This was a race war, and to personally participate in the battle of hundreds of thousands of people, many of them were very excited. Most of them did not care about the state of the subterranean mutants. They only cared about the mission requirements. As long as they were told where to go, who to kill, and how much the reward was, it would be fine. The commander of the hundreds of thousands of players in the Sunil troops was Haluz. He was standing at the front, with Sarinder and the other Sunil warriors behind him. Beside him there was a portion of the Black Star officers, Orochia, Jeanette, Harmon, and the Volga brothers. Han Xiao did not move together. He was supervising the construction of base number 3, guarding it strictly to prevent the construction team from cutting corners. In order to let the huge army go underground, the Sunil troops had already widened the diameter of the underground cave. The dark cave entrance was like the mouth of the abyss. Haluz turned around to face everyone and spoke. He used all his pugilist energy, and his voice turned into a surging sound wave that spread to the entire army. "Warriors of Sunil, our race has already suffered too much. The last enemy is underground. Only by getting rid of them can we end all of this and let Sunil walk toward a bright future. Therefore, my comrades, fight with all your might. The breathing of the Sunil soldiers became heavy. Everyone who was willing to become a soldier had long decided to give up their lives for their race. Now that they finally saw hope, everyone was filled with fighting spirit. The subterranean mutants instantly became their irreconcilable enemy. Let's go. Haluz took the lead and walked into the cave. The huge army followed behind him and entered the cave in a grandiose manner. The long journey did not diminish the high morale of the Sunil soldiers. Many players were also affected by this atmosphere and felt that they were saving Sunil. Finally, the vanguard troops arrived underground. They quickly took out all kinds of lighting equipment and lit up the dark underground world. Unexpectedly, the troops did not continue forward but stayed around the cave and started to build a camp. Because the underground world was too big, there were quite a few nests nearby that could not be destroyed in a day. Therefore, their strategy was to build a camp in the underground world as a bridgehead and supply point, a place for the mercenaries and Sunil soldiers to rest. After organizing the troops, Haluz turned on the life detection radar. With one look, he was shocked. The first nest that they had explored the last time had lost all life signals. This time, their target was the first nest. But now the target was gone? Haluz was shocked. He thought that the radar was broken. Haluz instantly became alert. They did not know enough about the subterranean mutants. Abnormalities often meant danger. This time, the troops behind entered one after another. Haluz quickly ordered them to stay put and pass the work of building the camp to the troops. He personally led the vanguard troops to the first nest. The deeper they went, the more alert Haluz became. He was prepared to be attacked at any time. However, the journey was smooth, and he successfully reached the depths of the nest. The subterranean mutants in the first nest seemed to have disappeared into thin air. Where did they go? Haluz could not figure out, but he did not stop moving forward. Very soon, they arrived at the Prophecy Stone mine. Seeing the situation of the mine, everyone was stunned. The mine was actually empty. The mining traces were clearly left behind by the subterranean mutants. It was as if they had dug out all the prophecy stones. Haluz hurriedly ordered his men to investigate the situation of the entire nest. Not long later, they finally concluded that the subterranean mutants of this tribe had left the nest with the prophecy stones. Why did this happen? The other nests clearly did not change, but the nest that we explored the last time disappeared. Haluz's eyes widened. He suddenly realized that it was because of their appearance that the subterranean mutants moved on their own accord. The intelligence of the subterranean mutants was beyond his imagination. Furthermore, there were tens of millions of subterranean mutants, and they were all gone in just a few days. The efficiency of this race was too scary. What should we do now? Everyone looked at each other. They had come here with high fighting spirit, only to find that the enemy had disappeared. They felt as if they had punched cotton. Their hearts were empty and full of disappointment. Haluz hesitated for a moment before saying, "Let's set up camp first. The situation here is beyond our expectations. I have to report this to the upper echelons." What? The subterranean mutants have displayed astonishing intelligence? The Sunil upper echelon, Otis, received Haluz's reply and gasped in shock. The prophecy stones were something that the Sunils had to destroy. They had thought that the subterranean mutants were restricted to the vicinity of the mine, but they had not expected the subterranean mutants to dig out the prophecy stones and move around. Although the mine was gone, the prophecy stones produced by this mine were still there. They were even moving around with the subterranean mutants, increasing the difficulty of the mission. Furthermore, the potential that the subterranean mutants had displayed had already set off alarm bells in Otis' heart. In the future, the subterranean mutants will definitely grow into a new intelligent race and become a new civilization. They will compete with us for the resources of this planet. We have to kill them while they're still in their infancy. Otis clenched his fists. Huh? They ran away with the prophecy stones? What kind of operation is this? Han Xiao also received the report and had a thoughtful expression. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.